It's time for Windows Weekly. We celebrate our 900th episode with Paul and Richard. We'll talk about Windows 11. 24H2 is coming soon. And, of course, Paul is upset. Are you surprised? HP has some really nice new flagship AI PCs. But what does it mean when the Copilot button is the last button you want to hit? And we're going to talk about some big Xbox news. Blizzard, Activision, and Xbox, a brand new book coming out October 8th that tells all. Paul has the details and a whole lot more coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 900. Woo! Recorded Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. The 8 Poles of Inaccessibility. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show we get together to talk about Microsoft with these two cats right here from Macungie, Pennsylvania, in the blue trunks. Paul Thurrott, Thurrott.com. Hello,
Welcome
Paul.
back, Leo.
Yes, thank you, by the way, to Micah for filling in for me last couple of weeks. Also
Looks
with
like
us,
you
Richard
had a-
Campbell,
Hello.
Park.
British to be at home.
I enjoyed Canada. We came back from a 2-week trip to Canada.
St. Lawrence Seaway, right?
Yeah, well, river.
Well, it starts
Because
out
we
as
didn't
Seaway,
go
but you go
past
far enough.
Montreal. If you go far enough, you get the Seaway.
Yeah.
But we went to with Saguenay. Saguenay is beautiful, and the river there with all the fjords was incredible, just gorgeous. Went to St. John, Halifax,
Yeah.
Saguenay. Yep.
St. John, Newfoundland.
Not Newfoundland. St.
No.
John,
No.
Nova Scotia.
There's 2 St. Johns in Canada. Come on, Canada.
That's like you guys read
Jeez.
names.
And then Halifax.
Don't get me started on Portland. But yes.
And then, so that was the Anglophone part of Canada, the Scots part of it, and then into the French part. It was, and Quebec City is amazing.
yeah.
And then I got COVID in Montreal. So,
There you go.
Yeah. Well,
I went to the pharmacy because it was my understanding in Canada that you can go and a pharmacist will give you Paxlovid. I went in there and she said, we have no, at first I said, do you speak English? She said, yes, I speak English. I said, do you have Paxlovid? She said, no, I didn't. And if we did, it'd be $1,000. I said, oh, okay.
the medicine stuff's so weird, depending on where you go.
Yeah,
In
because I don't have
Mexico-
health. I don't have
Mexico,
health
everything's
planning.
over the counter. The
Yeah.
only thing you can't get is like controlled substances, But then you go to, like, we went to the UK one time. My daughter, stomach was upset. We needed to get Pepto-Bismol, so I went over and to
You need
buy
a
it in
prescription
the
for
airport.
that?
Yeah. She asked me who it was. Well, they have an age restriction. So
They
she
don't
said,
want
well,
you
who-
huffing.
She said, how old is the person? Are you going to take this? I said, no, it's my daughter. She said, how old is she? And it's, 5 or something. Yeah, we can't say that. So I walked back and I'm like, your turn. And my wife went and she said, is this for you? And she said, yep.
Yes, that's a trick. That's
like-
a trick. Yeah, it's for me.
It's just ridiculous.
Well, I never did get Paxlovid because here in the United States, it's I don't know, a controlled substance. Anyway,
Yeah.
I feel fine. I feel great actually.
Your
But
immune system's working. You've had the
Yeah.
vaccine, so
Yeah,
We get
I
new-
mean, I still
think we
test
get new ones
positive,
this fall, right?
So I'm still sleeping on the couch.
Yeah.
But actually, Lisa's very kindly sleeping on the couch,
Oh, that's nice.
and I'm sleeping in a full-size bed. But that's not why you're here. We're a little late today because we just watched the Meta Connect keynote with Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg. Do you guys watch along with me? Anything to say about it? No?
No, I flipped it on for a bit, but
Other than my mild disdain for the company. Not really. What did they announce? Anything of note?
The Meta Quest 3X.
New headset,
S,
yeah.
which is a lower priced version of the Meta Quest 3.
Okay.
They did announce some updates to the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, which look pretty impressive, including a translation feature, simultaneous translation feature, which looked pretty well.
Okay.
And they talked about a new AR headset that they're working on, but it is in the distant future. So it was all right. You know what? It was most interesting to me. They didn't mention Facebook once.
right.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah,
not the Facebook company anymore.
Well, it's a developer show. There's nothing for developers.
Well, you know what, though? This is Richard said something before the show that was sort of like this. There's another kind of a meme in the tech industry that goes back to forever. Like when Apple was pimping the Mac in the 80s, the Apple IIe was making all the money, or the Apple II line. And I can assure you, the MetaQuest whatever is not making any money, and that all that money is coming out of ads that come off of Facebook.
You market what you want to sell, not what you're selling.
Right.
Yeah.
No, Facebook's still the engine, but I really think that they've pivoted well away from it, right? That they understand that there's not much future because nobody under 50 uses it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not true. I have
Under
nephews
40?
that use it so they can communicate with their parents.
Kids. Oh, right. Yeah. Well,
But yeah.
but they use Instagram. The youngs use Instagram.
Yeah.
I mean, but
Sorta.
in very limited ways, in my experience. I mean, in fact, that's something I've been meaning to ask my kids about. What's the point of a post that you put up that disappears? Like, I don't get that. I have to take screenshots of my daughter's stuff because it will never be anywhere. Otherwise, I'll never get to see what she's doing.
Dad, she doesn't want you to see it.
Yeah.
I know, but
It's about not having a history that comes back to haunt you.
That's
That's what
exactly
it is.
right. That's
yeah.
exactly right.
I am nothing but a history that comes back to haunt me. So,
It's funny. I was in a meeting earlier this week with a friend of mine that we've done business together for many years, and I quoted him something we said when we were trying to build a company in like 2009. All right? And I said, and he quoted it back to me. He said, if we're not prepared to hire someone under the age of 30 who has pictures of themselves vomiting on Facebook, we don't get to hire anybody under 30.
Good point.
And I said that was just that window of time, and before people figured out putting pictures of yourself vomiting on the internet is unwise. But there was a time when that's what the young people were doing on Facebook. So we hired a few vomiters.
Oh, God.
You do what you got to do.
Let's move on. This is episode 900. Congratulations, gentlemen.
we did it.
I'm not even 100 in yet. I was going back looking at my notes.
Is that true?
First time I wrote up a whiskey was 8/11.
August of last year, 2023? No, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
It was in the
At
winter.
least 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So he said 8/11.
When you say
you
11,
meant, you meant
Canadian
November 8th.
time.
It was episode 8/11. Yeah.
God,
episode
It's
8/11.
not the worst thing about Canadians, but my God, it's got to be in the top 10.
Putting the month in the middle? Yeah.
I don't put the month in the middle.
What did you mean by 8? Oh, 8/11. I'm sorry. You were talking
Episode
about the episode
8/11.
The episode.
Yeah, it was episode 8/11. All of you misconstrued it. But
88 episodes ago.
And by the way, when I quote a date, I quoted an ISO standards. Year, month, day. There is nothing else.
It is year, month, day. It's the
Anything
only
else
way.
is foolishness.
I completely agree with you. Year, month, day.
Okay.
Now, let's talk about Windows 11.
Why not?
Why not?
I lose track of where we are, with what we talked about last time, et cetera, et cetera. But I would have said, I'm sure, that this week that we're in now is week D. Mm-hmm. So if everything goes according to schedule, we will have gotten a preview update for that will be the 24H2 update that Microsoft ships next month.
Right.
And everything did go to schedule because yesterday happened. And we did not get that because that's how everything has gone this year. It's perfect. So what Microsoft did instead was on Monday, they shipped 2 separate builds to the release preview channel of the Windows Insider program that I believe are going to map to the week D update we'll all get late, which has happened at least 2 other times this year, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, here we are. We're bearing down on this release. They're supposed to, according to their own schedule, ship the preview version of this update on Tuesday. And on Monday, they're like a kid cramming for an exam the night before.
Yes.
Or like, oh, crap.
We need one of these.
We
and
should
one of
probably
those.
compile that, huh?
Yep.
Like, just classic. It's like when I was in the 11th or 12th grade, I had a teacher, biology class, handed out a piece of paper with a periodic table of the elements on it. And he said, you need to memorize this. We're going to have a test on it on June 2nd next year, last day of school. And this is the last time we're ever going to talk about it. So
Nice.
there was, and
At least that was honest, right?
there are some people who, probably started memorizing that thing that night, and I threw it in the trash and forgot about it, and I failed that test. But the point is, that's the type of person I am, and that's the type of team I think we have at Microsoft right now, or the Windows team anyway. Mm-hmm. So my guess is that, and my guess, educated guess based on, history, is someday later this week, we will get the week D update. It will be the thing that will be 24H2. They'll change the build number because they do that. But October 8th will come and they'll start rolling that out. That's my I'm still on that, that premise, I guess. Now that doesn't it doesn't change a thing, A couple of new features, not much to discuss. It's kind of interesting that 22 and 23H2 are both getting the same update. 22H2, of course, will be out of support by the end of October.
It's gone. Yeah.
So this will be the last release for that version. Although
Thank
it's the
goodness.
same. 22 and 23H2 are the same thing.
Not
right?
really anything different. Yeah.
Yeah, and then nothing big. Media controls on the lock screen underneath those 4 card tile things, whatever they're called. If you're playing media, because we all do so many things on our lock screen. You search for files with what we used to call start search, and if the file is local, it will have a share option there that you can just access without having to go into the file explorer first. And then this is so beautiful and perfect, Microsoft. I didn't bother looking this up because seriously, who cares? These things change every 2 seconds. But if you're running Windows 11 right now, it doesn't matter what version, chances are very good that if you click your profile picture in the start menu, this kind of new interface pops up. Microsoft calls it an account manager, which is ridiculous. There's no management of account occurring here, but it will show you the Microsoft subscriptions that you have. So I have Microsoft 365 Family and Game Pass Ultimate. It also shows Copilot Pro, which I canceled in August, and it says that, and I don't know why it's still there, but whatever.
But it just wants to remind you made a bad choice back in August.
Yeah, right. But there's a little ... menu up in the corner for more options, and that's where you really access those options. Sorry,
I click start.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And then
your computer.
And then I click my head here.
Yep.
And
so there's your account manager. So you can see all your what
Microsoft
what you have.
365 personal Xbox Game Pass Ultimate Cloud Storage unable to load. Okay.
Yeah. So see the little ... in the corner?
Yeah.
Typically, the options you see there are the options that most people are going there for. So if you have 2 or more accounts, you'll see a switch account or log out option. Sign out, it says. You'll see the options. You can click on it and just sign into the other account, etc. They're moving the sign out option out to this main account manager window because less than 4 months ago they made this stupid interface, and then before they ship 24H2 they're going to fix it because so many people complained. So this is how we do things now.
So they're listening.
That's a glass.
Yeah, I mean, think of it that way, right? Yeah.
They rolled it out with
the great thing about making a bad feature is you get 2 versions for it, right? The version where you roll out the bad feature and the version when you revert it.
It's slightly better than the Copilot thing where it's been in 3 different places in the UI and then went from a pane to a resizable pane to a standalone app that you can uninstall. Classic. All in the span of like 9 months.
The story arc of every piece of software, really.
But you don't really know how people are going to react till you do it, right?
You could test it.
They'll be crazy now.
If you had a formal process for testing.
They did test it. They put it out in the world.
That's the test right there.
Yeah.
Every piece of software is tested. Just tested on customers.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the continuous innovation thing, right? So we've talked about this.
We'll call it innovation as opposed to indifference.
Well, we're closing in on the 10-year anniversary of Terry Morrison announcing this thing called Windows
as a service.
As a service. As I said that, I was like, that doesn't make sense. Yeah,
Windows as a service. It didn't make sense then either.
I'm like, these words, I understand every word in that sentence, and none of them make sense together. And,
you had the correct reaction.
I argued at the time that, Windows is like this legacy software code. Trying to keep this thing updated like a service is such a huge mistake.
Yeah.
And they made a lot of mistakes, and there were a lot of problems. And the irony is, they actually got really good at it. They can update Windows like a service. Mm-hmm. And now they do. They update it every damn month, and they update it twice a month sometimes.
And for the most part, people can't even tell. Only the Throts of the world know where they are.
Well, or an IT support staff.
One of them. The IT folks are pretty good about just not touching it. Okay. They put up WSUS, which by the way is being deprecated.
Yeah,
and don't allow Microsoft to do anything to their machines. You just can't. You would not survive.
Right. It's good because I'm not already mental, so dealing with this is fine.
Oh, no, I'm pretty sure this is a set of Thurrott features they're building. It's like
it's a Thurrott.
How do we send Thurrott into complete catechism? This is the path.
Well, I don't mind regular behind the scenes updates like Arc, my browser. Is always getting updated, Chrome and stuff. But this changes stuff around, and does it always require a reboot?
The monthly updates do, yes.
Yeah. So it is kind of a pain.
Although most of the time, they've gotten pretty good at making reboots hard to tell now. You just come back to your machine.
And it did it. It's done.
And it's done it, except that stuff all starts to repopulate.
It's like when someone moves things in your office a little bit and you come in and you're like, oh, something's different.
Something's wrong.
You can kind of tell.
Microsoft's been dusting again.
Yeah.
But we sort of glanced over the central issue here, which is just that Richard said this. I think they are in fact testing these things in production, right?
Yeah.
And that's something people did not sign up for. So I just have a problem with that. But
what's the point of having an insiders program if you're all insiders? Yeah.
That's right. They skip. They don't go logically through those channels. They sometimes skip them entirely. And then you get this situation, the classic one, and this was right when I think Richard was first coming on the show, was there was a period of time, and it was a long period of time, like a year, where there were 3 different versions of OneDrive you could have, and I'd have to go and look, but I think with 24H2 finally, even a base install gives you that final 3rd version. I don't think we are, have gone back, but for a long, long time, you would install just clean 23H2 and maybe even today still you got that first version. Now you might jump right to the 3rd version eventually, but
right.
With a bunch of computers, I'd be here like there's 1, there's 2, there's 1 again, there's 3.
Again, it's such a distinctly Thurrott problem because I have a huge array of computers around me. Yeah, all running more or less the same operating system. I get to see every variation because it's not.
Yeah, no, I'm the canary, and to this day, this week at least, I'll get an email. Someone will say, "Hey, did you know? I think Microsoft's turning on folder backup on me. I know that sounds crazy." And I'm like, yeah, I raised that issue on October 6, 2023 and was told by many people I was a crazy person. That Microsoft would never do something like that.
Yeah.
But so
that is what is happening.
Yep. Would you like to turn this feature on? No. Would you like to turn this feature on? No. Would you like to turn this feature on? No.
This feature's on.
Come on.
It's on. Yeah. But we're not going to tell you. That's the final.
Well, it makes you so much more comfortable if you don't know about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And for someone who, like people like us, you wake up one day and you delete something from your desktop and it gives you a message about deleting from OneDrive and you're like, God damn. Like seriously, what
did I say?
They've done it again. Yeah. So anyway, this is the world. So it's okay. So anyway, looking forward, I would say my guess again. I do think we're going to see weak D. I think if you're on 24H2 or whatever, or 23H2, I guess it doesn't matter. It's going to map to this or these release preview channel builds,
right?
And then. And look, these things don't roll out all at once. If you were to list all of the features in these updates or in 24H2 or in the October update that 23H2 will get, most of them are CFRs, controlled feature release updates. So they'll come out when they come out. We don't know. We're spinning a wheel. We'll see what happens. There's no way to know. It's fun.
It's an adventure. What would you talk about?
I don't know. Listen, I'd love to move on to more pragmatic things, but this is what we do talk about.
All right.
Last week, we got new beta channel and dev channel builds, I think on Friday. And it was kind of interesting timing because someone had just asked me, like, is it me or does it seem like the insider program's kind of slowed down? And it's like, yeah, they're probably waiting to get over the hump and then they can start pumping out features for, these different channels. So the beta channel is currently up testing on the 23H2, fork or whatever.
Right.
Dev is on 24H2. So these are features we're going to see in stable in November, maybe December, that kind of thing. So
yeah. So 24H2 comes to everybody by November. One would argue likely in the Ignite timeframe.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they'll keep doing what they do. They'll keep adding these new features. So
and 23H2's got another year on it or so before they're going to stop supporting.
Yeah, and they're roughly aligned, as they are, and that will keep going, right? So it's kind of odd that there aren't like the same features of both of these, which is kind of goofy. But there's some interesting stuff though. So everybody's favorite new keyboard key, the Copilot key. Which is a problem for me because I'm a messy typist and I hit it erratically all the time.
And it makes the whole computer twitch when you touch it.
Yeah. So I came up with what happens is Copilot launches, because Copilot is a standalone app and is based on Edge, like web technology. I now just reactively type Control W to kill it as soon as the friggin' thing comes up in my face,
Nice.
right? But you can remap it. I think if you don't have you can uninstall Copilot, and if you uninstall Copilot and have a Copilot key, I believe I should know, it launches the snipping tool. So now I launched the snipping
That's
tool on
kind of
one computer.
useful.
Not if you don't mean to do it, And snipping tool is a little harder to get rid of in the sense that you can, of course, escape out of it, but it never seems to go away in the first one. And it's actually, I actually
Can't
had
control
to
W out of it either, right?
No.
No, and I actually reinstalled Copilot on one computer because it was driving me crazy. But in the beta
Snip
channel,
tool drives you crazier than the Copilot tool. I'm surprised.
yeah. So in the beta channel, they're going to let you configure what happens when you hit that key.
Nice.
That's interesting, right?
I'm thinking just, that's all you need.
Nice.
Right?
Well, here's the problem. So it has to be an MSIX packaged app, and it has to be signed too.
I can put a signed MP3 file in there for you, but
I was thinking about putting I've actually written an app that just toggles the light and dark mode in Windows because it's tedious to get to it in settings, and I need to do
put that on it, so it just like blinds you suddenly.
It will just like burp, burp, burp. I was thinking about it. This is anyway.
Come up with a thing that makes you press the Copilot button again.
Exactly. So we'll see what that looks like. And then the dev channel has a lot more in the way of new stuff, but there's those new File Explorer features we've kind of talked about with the shared tab. They're going to do the tabbed interface now in the home view with, I think it's recent, favorites, and shared, which is new. There's some other stuff about file support. The new Windows Sandbox client, which is in preview, is in that build now. They're going to start putting Microsoft 365 on the taskbar when you sign in to Windows with an Enter ID account. So, okay, whatever. That media controls and a lock screen, who cares? Jump lists. Oh, jump lists is kind of interesting. So if you have Microsoft Edge, actually it doesn't do anything. I'm trying to find an app that I have that actually has a jump list. I'm trying to find one. I'm sorry. I don't use this computer normally. So anyway, jump lists appear on the icons that you pin to the taskbar, but when you right click in Start, you get a context menu, but that's a Start context menu. What you don't get is the jump list. So they're actually adding that to Start. So yeah, I mean, that's fine, right? That's fine. And some other small things, but and then there's also going to be a snipping tool update that's going to be going out to everybody eventually, but Canary and Dev right now, that will
makes
allow
the
you
screen
to
twitch more, so that when you
no, it's going to let you choose the folder to where those screenshots are saved, which actually is one of a handful of reasons I do not use this tool. So this might get me closer to this.
It occurs to me that the biggest thing the Copilot button could add to itself is that whatever it launches when you press it goes away when you press it again.
Yeah, like a talk.
Then it wouldn't matter, right?
That would be clever.
Here's what I'd like to do. Make it do nothing. I downloaded a utility that can map any key. And on one computer, and now it's gone. I think I sent it back to whoever, but I mapped it to the left arrow key because that's the key to the right of it. So when I mistype, I'm usually trying to hit left arrow.
You're trying to hit that key anyway. That's brilliant.
So that's like one.
What was the key I meant to hit? Do that.
Yeah, just do that. Exactly. Do what I mean, not what I say.
There you go.
I think the Copilot key is now a feature of all Windows keyboards.
So I thought this was, when they announced this, I assumed we would see it on a select set of computers.
Right.
Like as an add button, like an indicator.
And it would just go away because nobody wants this thing.
Right.
Instead, it has been on every computer I've ever seen, new, and I'm starting to think this is
They're going to make this
gonna
thing stick. Well, it worked with the Windows key too, right? Like
that's right.
They did make this stick.
And I think that the fact that they're allowing you to configure what it does is indicative of that, because businesses would never allow this otherwise, right? I mean, they would just not get those computers, right? So I think now they're saying, look, we have to do this.
But I guarantee you there's a group of sysadmins chatting now about what to do with that button, because the one thing it's not going to do is launch Copilot.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. Exactly. There's no more worthless piece of software in Windows than Copilot. Okay. And we've talked about the Windows app in the past.
That's not the term that the system is talking about. There's no riskier piece of software than Copilot.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's right. That's true. Copilot, Copilot. The Windows app everyone loves the name of so much. We're in contention now with the new Outlook app for the most hated app of 2024 is now available.
And it's not actually awful. Like, it's just a bad name.
Yep.
If you had called it RDP Pro, I think people would be happier. At least you'd be saying what it was.
Yeah. I don't know how to say this. There have been time frames where, like Sinofsky's regime, his time, that team was very interested in getting rid of terminology and products and technologies that came from previous teams.
Yes.
They had to rename everything and do all that kind of stuff.
We'll call it the lynchings.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't see it as that kind of a history rewriting thing. I just think this is like doofuses, and they're just, Mac using designers who have never used Windows, they don't understand.
Like somebody sat down and said, how do I make a term so unsearchable that nobody will ever find my product?
Yeah, exactly. I'm searching for a Windows app. Oh, good luck with that. Because there are a lot of them. And
said the guy who is on a podcast called .NET Rocks with the period in the front, because that doesn't screw anything up.
I have the app that I write is called .NET Pad because I hate myself, and instead of Notepad, right? So there is not a word processor or text editor on earth that can handle this. There's no version of
you've ruined everything.
The front-facing period. Just leave it. Just like don't stop. It flags it every single time. Yeah. Yep. And I mean, it's 20 years later, whatever. They're never going to fix that one.
I know.
Let's pause, if you don't mind, fellas. And we shall continue in just a moment. You are watching Windows Weekly. And let me press the right button if I could figure out which. There it is. There you are.
Is that the right button?
It's a button.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. It's a button.
Let's not put qualifiers on it.
Yeah.
Let's just call
it's
it
not the Copilot button. That's the.
I like the idea that like in front of you is either the cockpit of a 727 or just you have like 3 buttons, and like either way you have you're just hitting things.
You're going to hit the wrong one.
You want to see what's in front of me? It's crazy. Look at all this.
I love it. It's beautiful.
They got all this nutty stuff in front of me.
So. Fantastic.
Too many buttons.
Too many boutons.
What is this too many you speak of?
Well, too many for my limited capabilities. Our show today, you watching Windows Weekly, by the way, Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, and we will get right back to it in a second. Paul's going to talk about some new HP PCs, but first, a word from our sponsor, Experts Exchange. I was a long-time user of Experts Exchange, especially during the Tech Guide, because I was always getting questions I didn't know the answer to, and I thought, this is great. There's a site I can go to with a network of trustworthy, talented tech professionals who know everything. I can go there to get industry insights, advice from people who are actually using the products in your stack instead of paying for expensive enterprise level tech support. But nowadays, it's even more important because Experts Exchange is the tech community for people who are tired of the AI sellout. Experts Exchange is ready to help carry the fight for the future of human intelligence. That's what you get on Experts Exchange. You get actual humans, experts in over 400 different fields. We're talking coding. We're talking Microsoft Azure. We're talking DevOps, AWS, Cisco, on and on. Unlike other places, they don't condescend. They don't look down on you. They don't snark. Duplicate questions are encouraged. There are no dumb questions. They're there because they are experts and they love answering questions. They're tech junkies. And you know what? One of the things they've really realized, and I think I've realized is true, is that the real value, the real benefit, the real payoff of becoming an expert in something is not keeping it all to yourself. Saying, I know the answer, but I'm not going to tell you. Oh, you're so dumb. That's the second time I've heard that question today. No, sharing it, helping somebody, paying it forward. And that's what's going on at Experts Exchange. Real experts who love answering questions. One member said, quote, I've never had ChatGPT stop and ask me a question before, but that happens on Experts Exchange all the time. The follow-ups, well, what are you trying to do? That kind of thing. Experts Exchange is proudly committed to fostering a community where human collaboration is fundamental. Collaboration. You can't collaborate with an AI. It doesn't make sense. But you can at Experts Exchange. And some great people in there, many of them are listeners to our shows, like Rodney Barnhart, big Security Now fan. He's a VMware vExpert, plus Cisco design professionals, even like C-suite level folks, executive IT directors, and more. You can get management questions answered there too, not just technical questions. And here's the most important thing. Other platforms, and we're seeing it more and more. Lisa just asked me, she's on one of those business social networks, won't name names, owned by Microsoft, and realized people are getting upset because their posts are being ingested by AI. Lots of platforms now do this, selling their content to train AI models, but not Experts Exchange. Your privacy is not for sale. They stand against the betrayal of contributors worldwide. They have never and will never sell your data, your content, your likeness. They block and strictly prohibit AI companies from scraping content from their site to train LLMs. And moderators strictly refuse LLM content. They just say, no LLM content in our threads. Look, this is the supreme reward for becoming an expert, the fulfillment of passing your knowledge on to help someone in need. And if you're in need, you're going to get answers at Experts Exchange. Experts deserve a place where they can confidently share their knowledge without worrying about some corporation stealing it to increase shareholder value. Humanity deserves a safe haven from AI and a chance to talk to real people to get real answers to real questions. It's Experts Exchange. Join it today. They're so confident you're going to love it and get value at it. They're giving away 3 months free. You don't even need to give them a credit card./1 90 days free. Try it out. Rediscover what it's like to have humans answer your questions. e-e.com/twit. And if you're an expert, you can karma points, you get CPE credits, all sorts of stuff. e-e.com/twit to find out more at Experts Exchange. And we thank them so much for supporting the Windows Weekly program and the good work. Oh, they're I can get rid of my office now.
We don't know.
Everybody, I'm down here.
Every time, it's just going to be something different every time. It's good.
It's an answer.
It's like Windows updates. You never know. It's just going to be something.
I think this is a better, but no, maybe I should do this. Make you guys little.
No, I like that one. Yeah.
Leo, can I come back to the other one?
Really little.
I think we represent the Lollipop Guild.
All right, back we go to the real people, the real experts on this show.
But I was listening to this. I've not used the Experts Exchange, but like a lot of people have gone to Stack Overflow or sites like that.
They're so snarky. They're so snarky.
I cannot. I need we have ad blocking and tracker blocking. I need like useless blocking, and useless blocking is like the one is like someone asks a very specific question. I've searched for this term on Google or wherever, so I ended up here. I too may be looking for this thing, and some guy will say, "You don't want to do that," or may I ask why you are trying to do that? And it's like, no, you may not. You may get out of the way and allow forward progress to occur.
Stop showing up in my search results.
I know, it's awful.
It's so annoying. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's Experts Exchange. You're going to like it. Check it out.
I like the sound of it. That's for sure. Yeah. I mean, having suffered, So this week, HP had their annual Imagine event out in Palo Alto.
Yeah, I like new hardware. I'm just excited about new hardware.
They announced a bunch of stuff. I only talked about the laptop stuff, but they also have they have gaming hardware that's not PCs, but headphones and other things. They own Poly now, so they do a bunch of hybrid work, cameras, headphones, all that stuff. A lot of that stuff. But they're building out this AI PC line that they have. They did that rebranding where all the consumer products are Omna something and all the commercial products are Ultra something. Did I get that right? No, sorry, Elite something. And there's some new stuff. And I'm struggling to understand some of the stuff. But the first one, the commercial one, the one that you could see there, is an EliteBook 1040 with a different name and with AMD Ryzen processors.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, that one thing we can't get with the ThinkPad Carbon series, X Carbon. So that's super interesting. I love that device style.
This form factor is incredible.
Gorgeous. Yeah, it's gorgeous. The keyboard's awesome. Other than the little weird issues I had at that time. And then on the Omni side, on the the other side, the consumer side, they have introduced let's see, at IFA they announced the successor to the Spectre X360. So now it's out. You can actually buy this. It's called the Omnibook Ultra Flip. This is how that works in their new naming convention. Gorgeous. This is Intel Core Ultra Series 2 processors, which are also fantastic by all counts. So that's great. And then this troubling little bit, because they announced 2 laptops, but really they announced 2.1 laptops because they have their...
That's not a lot of laptop, a little point.
It's not. It's a slice of a laptop. Yeah. It's over the summer, in June, they announced 2 Copilot Plus PCs based on Snapdragon, right? So there was an Omni Book, whatever, that was the consumer version, the consumer laptop. And then there was the Elite Book Ultra, which was the high-end commercial version, right, running Snapdragon X Elite. Mm-hmm. So they've added an 8-core model to that line, meaning a Snapdragon Plus 8-core, the 8-core chip that Qualcomm announced at IFA,
right,
to that lineup. And
so that's the lower end of the Ultras.
Yeah. Now, this will be a way to get that thing at a lower price point, of course. So that's, that's always good, but...
Like this is in the $1,000 range, like that low, or...
They don't have pricing yet, so I can't...
Because the normal Ultras are close to 2, right? Or 2
Yeah, they're going to be, and that, yeah. They're always sales, so you can usually get ones 12, 15, but yes, list prices are high. People, companies buy these things in bulk, right? So that's, when you buy it at retail, you're not really seeing the real price, I guess. But yeah, so the thing is, this is what we saw at IFA, right? Lenovo, especially some of the other PC makers, all of the companies announced some 8-core versions of something.
Not all Snapdragon.
On Snapdragon, but when they did, they were all
8-core Snapdragons. Yeah, okay.
No new X Elite anything.
No. So this is just speaking to this yield problem we are thinking is there. I would also think.
Speaking of which, did you get your developer kit yet?
No.
Okay, just
no.
You would have thought a 3-week trip to Canada or whatever that was. Maybe.
I was sure when I got home there'd be a little something at the doorstep, but no,
nothing.
And so maybe we were wrong about that whole HDMI soldered shut.
No. I think the HDMI thing was real.
Yeah,
I think.
But there's still yield issues. You think?
No. I think this is in the production line, right? Is that Qualcomm went and did this thing to produce?
They're probably in boxes, product. Right? Someone's going to have to open them up. We've seen this. I mean, this is. This has happened.
My suspicion is that their yields were low enough that now that the engineers went back and found a new bidding setting. They cut off other processors, like probably not anticipated bidding.
Right.
Like there's anticipated bidding where you've created cut traces and stuff to take out CPUs and chunks of RAM and whatever your yield problems are.
Right.
I suspect that now engineers have spent more time on them because the yield was that low and said, hey, it turns out if we cut here and here, like we could take these processors out and this machine work. We get another 15% of these processors.
This is so troubling.
No, dude, it's a new high density chip. I don't envy these guys. This is an incredibly hard problem.
Okay.
And I also appreciate that they're coming up with a yield factor, and then Qualcomm smartly turns around as soon as they know, okay, we're going to have X many thousand of these 8-core ones, goes to all the vendors and say, here's your price point. If you wanted a lower end price, here it is. But if you do it, you've got to announce it.
Yeah.
Right, and then you get that IFA effect.
Look, what is it? We're probably about a month away from hearing about what will be the next gen Snapdragon, whatever, right? So we'll see. But we've always kind of known going into this year that there was a really big chance that this thing was going to come out. I kept waiting for that iota of bad news about Snapdragon, like something would come out. No, it's like everything went great except for recall. But as far as the hardware goes, all good stuff. But the flip side of this is Intel, AMD are going to come out with their next gen stuff, and if those guys nail it in any way, shape, or form, I mean, at some point, what's the point?
Oh no, you're exactly right. This is like November is upon us. Like winter is coming, and that whatever that exclusivity arrangement is going to end.
Yep,
and they haven't delivered.
So here's the thing.
I love this. My estimated ship date now is September 25th.
Yeah,
and my estimated delivery date is September 20th. So
I've been resisting going to look at the Aero.
I had to look. You
email, so
brought it
you had
up.
to look. All
I'm
right.
in time warp right now. Here I am.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So I don't have any new Intel hardware, and I do have the new AMD Zen 5 HP laptop, which is awesome. And
Well, here's the question, Paul. Why are
Yeah.
we concerned? Like,
concerned.
yeah, because life would be better if there were more Copilot Plus PC hardware options. Like, why are we concerned? And I would argue
Yeah.
we're concerned because both you and I want
Yep.
Windows on ARM to come true.
Right.
And if these machines don't sell, as soon as you have Copilot Plus PCs,
Then
with
it's over.
chipset you already know
Yeah.
about, why would you take the chance? Now you have to live on the merits of ARM, and the merits of ARM aren't that strong.
Yes. I mean, yeah. So the issue is the issue before was multifold. ARM had serious compatibility issues and really serious performance issues. So that hampered sales. Why bother supporting this thing?
Right.
I think this came up last week, but there's this kind of notion of there's some deprecation occurring because it's not supporting legacy technologies. And so this is
Which, depending on who you are, is a really good thing.
exactly. But, we're lazy in the PC space, and I mean it across the board. I mean, PC makers are lazy, customers are lazy, businesses are lazy. We go to the thing that we know, and we stop thinking. And
We also consistently get punished by customers when we innovate too far,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody has one badly behaved app they must have, and it's all different.
Right.
And so that's why 10X failed and the ones before it. Like,
Yep.
security's cool right up until I can't run XYZ app, right?
Yeah. My experience with the AMD, the battery life keeps going up. So in the beginning, it was on the lower side, but because of Snapdragon, I actually really pay attention to this the whole time. I used to wait till toward the end, and I've seen it go from 6 to 7 to 8 to 8.5 now. And I'll look today or tonight and see if it's gone up again, or maybe we will level out at some point. But the performance is astonishing. It can play video games. It's fantastic.
Yep.
The Intel stuff that I've read is that they actually finally did the thing they were never going to do. The basic CPU performance is actually really low. It's low for U series. It's not where it was, but the GPU is very good. The NPU is fantastic, and for thin and light ultrabook class laptops, actually this is a really good solution. It's the thing Intel resisted for
It's
years.
like it's like a balanced solution because deeply
Yeah.
they believe that their processor performance is what makes their sauce secret.
Exactly. Now they're going to have Arrow Lake, and then after that, whatever lakes come next, Raptor Lake, et cetera. But that will address that stuff, that part of it, and give us higher TDPs and more performance and more cores and all that stuff. This is going to happen. So if you're that kind of customer and you like that stuff, don't worry, it's coming. But Intel, Intel has all these problems. We'll talk about that a little bit because we have to. It's been another week, but as far as the technical end of their mainstream processors for PCs, they did nail it. So the message they had at IFA, which was very aggressive, and I, was like, yeah, it's a good one. You don't have to worry about compatibility, and now where everything works. Now we have all the efficiency.
No, and it's the
whatever,
place
so.
they can attack.
Yeah.
Like if let's face it, if somehow Intel matched battery life,
Yep.
you'd walk. You would walk. Because why would
Yeah.
you go anywhere else?
Well,
a whole bunch of questions go away instantly.
That's right.
And because you addressed the one thing that mattered.
You start to get used to this stuff. It's very interesting. I often talk about that instant on thing with the screen, which there's a little nuance to that in a second we'll talk about, but and how great that is. And you get really used to it. And then you open a laptop and nothing happens. You're like, oh, yeah. This is like a meteor. Or you get used to just like all day battery life, right?
Yep.
So when you have a computer that lasts like a MacBook Air is 15 hours or Snapdragon,
more than a
whatever,
work day.
You don't even think about it.
You don't
It's
even think
another
about it.
thing.
Yeah.
That leads to interesting new problems where because you don't think about it,
Gets a charge.
you're like, oh crap, there's no, and I'm like, I'm not near a charger, and I don't, you actually,
always
And I didn't even bring one.
Yeah,
This is-
I'm
right, this
always
is-
shocked when I look at my Mac
Yep.
and there's no battery.
you're like, this
I'm
actually runs
how'd
out of
that
battery
happen?
life. I'd never seen that before. So so that just happened to me recently, and I'm like, wow, it took some number of months, but I actually got used to it. It's
Yeah.
a weird thing. So
Did
if
you
Intel
ever?
can
Have you
do it,
commented on the? You probably did this last week on the crazy rumor that Qualcomm was going to try to buy in.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna come up again. Yep, we're gonna talk about it today.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
It may not be that
it's
crazy.
Not a rumor, and it's not even a bad idea.
It's the Wall Street Journal. I mean, I guess
this
that's
is not right.
reliable.
It's not bobsrumoursite.com.
No, we're
multiple
jumping
sources.
ahead, but I've been thinking for a while Intel's ready to be broken up for parts as a legacy company.
Yeah. Save it. I don't want to.
Yeah.
No,
get you out of order, but
it's okay. There's
it's
stuff
an
going on
interesting topic.
Oh no, and it's very relevant. I totally agree.
Yeah, it's
I would
germane to this, right?
Yeah.
Intel could catch up unless they don't.
Yeah, and one would argue they have systemic architectural issues that they can't seem to address.
Yeah,
And would be better addressed by a different set
We're
of
going to find out.
leadership.
Their core IP, I guess, for lack of a better term, is this instruction set, right? It's the new 6502 or whatever. It's like the cockroach of CPUs.
It's nothing that new. x86 has been dragging around since the early 80s.
That's what I mean.
Man.
That's what I mean.
No, that's his point. It's become legacy.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's just, you know,
it's everywhere.
It's ugly and terrible, and it has. They're actually Intel. We don't have this in the notes, but Intel is working on a version of their architecture that strips out legacy code. So everything that's pre 64-bit, they're actually going to get rid of. That's actually really interesting.
not a bad idea.
That's not a bad idea at all. In fact,
it works.
Yeah, I mean,
But
we'll see.
But did we have to get this desperate to start really innovating? That's the issue here.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what happened. I mean, this is a huge.
Apparently we did.
Strategy.
The answer is apparently we did.
By empirical data,
But-
yes.
But listen, I mean, they apparently pulled out all the stops, put this thing out way earlier than they were going to originally. And look, we'll see. I mean, we're going to need 3, 4, 6 months reliability. We'll find out. But by all accounts, they kind of hit it out of the park here in a way that I don't think anyone anticipated. So it's actually
Good for them. I mean,
it's interesting.
If they modernize and stay alive, so much the better. But if they don't, take the parts that matter, cut off the rest, and keep going. Like a legacy eventually is a burden.
Right. No, for sure. Yep, 100%. So about 2 weeks ago, I noticed there was a firmware update for my Surface laptop, which is that Snapdragon X based machine, right? And so I went to the Microsoft support site to look up what it was, and there was no documentation for it. It's like, that's kind of curious. So I kind of sat on it, and then 5-6 days later, they actually updated the site. And I assumed because the Surface Laptop 7 and the Surface Pro 11 are the same board, it's the same computer inside, right? Different body, but basically the same thing, that there would be one for that machine as well. But they didn't document that at the time. So it took them 5 or 6 days to get the documentation out for Surface Laptop. And then 5 or 6 days later, they documented, yes, we did in fact deliver one for Surface Pro as well, and it is identical. Of course it is, right? It's exactly the same thing.
And the 7 and the Pro 11 are both the latest versions. Like this is not an old piece of firmware they're doing. This is can catch.
No, this is Snapdragon X, right?
Yeah.
So I think in both cases, it's the third firmware update that they've shipped since, before there was one that was there day one.
And that's to be expected, right? In a new chipset on a new implementation. That's totally reasonable.
I mean, I don't track this for HP or Dell or, Lenovo. I don't think anybody does.
Hardware.
No, but they release firmware updates regularly as well, right? And that's how you, among other things, you're fixing general reliability, performance, whatever issues. But that is the place.
It's also
where
a completely known pattern by completely known vendors building on a legacy of existing infrastructure. And Qualcomm and the Snapdragon machines are none of that.
No, of course. But Microsoft's always been really transparent. Like they actually document it. They put it up on their support site. You could, if you follow any Microsoft blogs, a lot of them will, every single time there's any firmware update, they'll write a little story about it, right? Just to kind of mention it. So I stopped doing that about 7 years ago, but you could, they're out there. So I'm paying attention now because I have this computer and I look back and I see how they've done it. And I'm like, okay, like this is all fine.
Yeah.
But this is the thing, that instant on thing I talk about all the time, that doesn't work anymore. and they have introduced
that can't be intentional, of course, but
no. The interesting thing is if you look over the list of fixes, they mention things repeatedly like wake on power. Sounds a lot like my thing. Wake on LAN, which semi-related. When system wakes from sleep mode, right. Something during sleep mode or transition between power. This stuff is all over this.
So yeah, and it broke the one thing you loved about this machine.
It's not that it doesn't just turn on. It does sometimes. It's that they've turned it back into a PC where I actually don't know what to expect.
You just broke your confidence,
and that kind of that hurts a little bit because we were gone for. I think I told the story last week, but we were gone for 1 week. We went to Berlin, and I left the MacBook Air sitting on the dresser, and I walked out. My wife was unpacking, and I said, "Watch this," and I opened the lid. And it came right on
where you were.
And I'm like, I think it lost maybe 5% of battery life at most. Maybe not even that.
Right.
And then I walked over to the Surface laptop before I'd gotten this thing, and it booted up from a sleep state, which is fine. Like, it's perfectly acceptable. It had been a week. Yeah. But now it's like, I don't know, so I keep checking it kind of, nervous about it a little bit. I want to I'm kind of hoping it kind of clears itself out or something, which doesn't make any sense, but it has not. So I assume if you have a Surface Pro 11, you might be experiencing something similar because they're the same computer, right? I don't know.
Breaking a feature that used to work
it's not good. Regression, right? This was something that was really special about this computer. I think it will be again. I think they'll issue a firmware update that fixes the firmware update, right?
Nice.
But we'll see.
I already did that, Joe.
I did, and actually, so let me go. Oh no, I'm on the wrong computer. This morning I saw something that looked like it might have been a firmware update, so I installed it, but the computer didn't reboot. So there was a Surface something, and I was like, oh, maybe this is it, and it wasn't
firmware, a driver update or something.
Yeah, and so I don't know, but yeah, I'm hoping they kind of get there. Okay, sometimes things happen and you're like, no, there's no way. Like, there's no way this is right. Like this is, you check the date. Like, is it April 1st? Is someone screwing with me? And I opened the iPad. I went to the news app. As I was doing this, I was saying something to my wife. So I'm in the middle of a sentence like I do on the show sometimes. And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just staring. She's like, are you okay? And I'm like, it says that Microsoft is reopening 3 Mile Island. Like, does that combination of words make sense to you? And so 3 Mile Island is, of course, the infamous site of the nuclear disaster.
1979. I've done a whole piece on this.
Yeah. In Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
So, of course, I'm excited for this thing to come back because this place needs to be a nuclear wasteland. And that thing is apparently there were two.
There are 2 reactors on 3 Mile Island site.
And one of them's still okay.
Yeah, one of them is a pile of slag.
No, that's not true. Reactor 2 was completely cleaned up. They removed the entire core assembly, 100%. Oh, no, it's not usable.
Oh,
but all of the
and it won't be for 100 million years. But
the corium has been removed. The radioactive materials.
You get tested. You have cancer. You have an operation, and they use like a little ice cream scoop, and they scoop it all out, and they're like, "We got it all." Do you just trust that, or you just like I don't know. I'm not saying I don't know what I'm saying.
But core reactor 1, they were running it. It got a license. It continued to operate.
That's true. Oh no, that's right. In fact,
but it is an older gen reactor, and it's just expensive to operate, so they turned it off.
That's right. And it wasn't that long ago. I want to say it was 2019, possibly.
Yeah, just a couple of years back.
If you go in, so the name of this company that owns it is Constellation. They're going to change the name of the facility, by the way, because of course they are.
It's
and it will have some awesome, Crane Clean Energy, whatever.
It's clean.
Crane was the guy who stuck his finger in the dike, so everyone didn't die or something. But okay. But if you read their announcement, it's actually really interesting. It's clear they're still upset they had to turn this thing off. Like they're kind of mad about it.
Sure.
They lash out at other forms of clean energy.
Nice.
And the basic claim was something to the tune of whatever wind and solar has done in Pennsylvania for the entire duration that it's existed, we will surpass that energy savings or energy generation in 1 month. Yeah. Or whatever. I'm paraphrasing, but they were basically
it's a gigawatt power plant. Like it's a lot. It does make a lot of electricity. It takes a lot of wind turbines to match that.
Yeah. So they're going to spend about $1.6 billion to get this thing restarted. There's we talk about the CHIPS Act a lot. There's actually an Inflation Recovery Act, which I would not normally know a thing about and still don't really, but there'll be some funding from the government that will help. Microsoft, of course, has signed a 20-year contract so that if this thing actually does come on, they're going to be there for a long, long time.
And what are they going to use it for, Paul?
what do you think? They're going to make Windows phones. No, they're going to.
Jeez.
It's for AI.
Yeah, they're going to power over 700,000 homes. Oh, no, they're not. They're going to power one AI thing.
Yeah.
One data center. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it's going to do.
How to make
there's-
your technology look like an overlord in one easy step.
It's funny because Pennsylvania is the state of coal, but there is another nuclear plant that is also running.
Well,
the Susquehanna
Pennsylvania
plant.
has a brighter new future, Leo. We're also the state of fracking. So I don't know why you're still stuck on coal.
Natural gas and coal.
We've moved way past
And apparently nuclear power.
yeah.
But I had the same reaction as you, Paul.
Yeah. Pardon the pun.
And we talked about it on Sunday on Twitter. And I was convinced that this is a good thing and that nuclear power is safe and clean and we need it. Desperately need the generation. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's kind of sad that we're putting all of this power into crypto and AI, which I'm not convinced.
Which
that's the
is
best
actually
use.
a problem for that federal funding because that, of course, is designed to for things that will provide electricity or whatever to
things we
human
need.
beings to citizens, not to a single private company,
Right.
Or a public company, but a non-citizen or non-state sponsored thing. So I don't know. We'll see if it happens. Apparently, this thing's in pretty good shape. They had inspected it years ago anyway. They of course they're doing that regularly. It's not like they
It
let
is a
kids
name that will live in
kids drink
infamy.
there and tag
Yeah.
inside and stuff. Like it's been
Any attempt to
protected.
rename it would not go well.
Chernobyl's back, ladies and gentlemen.
Chernobyl's back, but that one's going to be
exciting.
Google because they're super evil. Fukuyama's coming back too. Everything's going to be great.
Fukushima.
Yeah.
Fukushima, sorry. After they made Godzilla, they're going to bring that one back, and then Sony can use it
Well,
or something.
I thought that
Fukushima
was
5 and 6
hysterical
are
headline.
just fine.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess there are a couple of other nuclear power plants in the United States that were in the process of being decommissioned, and they might one or two of them might come back too. So fun.
Yeah, another one in Pennsylvania, Susquehanna.
Yeah, I mean, you get a book in the state, and then just make the whole thing unlivable. It's perfect.
Let's pause briefly, and we'll continue in just a bit. You're watching Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell, and I am your genial host, Leo Laporte, to tell you today about our sponsor, Lookout. Lookout. Love Lookout. Today, every company is in the business of managing data. Even a small company like ours. It's all about the data. That means, though, that every company is at increased risk of data exposure and data loss. From cyber threats, from breaches, from leaks. And of course, cyber criminals are growing more and more sophisticated every day. Modern breaches now happen in minutes, not months. At a time when the majority of sensitive corporate data has moved to the cloud, traditional boundaries just no longer exist. And the strategies you need for securing that data, they fundamentally changed. That's why you need Lookout. From the first phishing text to the final data grab, Lookout stops modern breaches as swiftly as they unfold, whether on a device, in the cloud, across networks, or even working remotely at the local coffee shop. Lookout gives you clear visibility into all your data at rest and in motion. You'll monitor, assess, and protect without sacrificing productivity for security. And with a single unified cloud platform, Lookout simplifies your life. It strengthens and helps you reimagine security for the world that will be today. You need Lookout. Find out more. Visit lookout.com right now to learn how to safeguard data, secure hybrid work, and reduce IT complexity. That's lookout.com. And we thank them so much for their support of Windows Weekly. And Paul Thurrott and Mr. Richard Campbell and Google.
And Google and Microsoft. Two best buds together again.
Oh, isn't
In
it
a
sweet?
Thelma and Louise style road trip.
Off a cliff.
So Google Cloud, that part of Google that's sort of like Azure, I guess, and a little bit like Microsoft 365. I don't know.
GCP, right?
Yeah.
Google Cloud Platform.
They have been complaining about Microsoft and their licensing practices in Europe for several years. In fact, this is one part of Google that always sends me news for some reason. It's kind of interesting. And they they just complain a lot. So this past January, Google dropped with the egress fees, right? So if you wanted to leave their cloud, go to a different cloud, they wouldn't charge you on the way out the door. And then they immediately started complaining because Microsoft wasn't doing the same thing, right? It's like, guys, you just stop doing it yourself. Come on, man. But the EU and I think the UK CMA as well, both at some point or another said, we're going to look into this. And Microsoft this past year had reached a settlement within an industry trade group in Europe that is full of European cloud vendors. And that seemed to have put an end to the antitrust worries in Europe for Azure, at least. So Google has decided for the first time ever, they're actually just going to formally complain in an antitrust to antitrust regulators about Microsoft. And they have done so. So they went to the European Commission and said, no, you need to look into this company. This is what they're doing is not right. So Microsoft's comment on this is, guys, we just put this behind us. We're done. But, it's the EU. So who knows? We'll see what happens there. But I guess the gloves have come off. They finally went right after Microsoft directly. They've been kind of doing a proxy battle, trying to convince these smaller companies in Europe. It's like these two giant evil monsters. Like, hey, don't you want to complain about the other monster? You should. They're terrible. They're going to screw you over. So it worked for a while, but then Microsoft settled. So that's the end of that. So we'll see what happens there. That's kind of fun. Leo mentioned this earlier. So LinkedIn updated its terms of service and said, yeah, guess what? We're going to use your data unless you tell us not to. So I went to go find out
to opt
how
out,
to turn that off. And it's not quite as convoluted as turning off the clicking sign you get in like Facebook when, the first time you have a new phone, but it's in there, so you can turn it off. That's
in the retail world, there used to be this concept called negative option billing. That same thing is like, hey, we're moving you to this new plan unless you tell us not to. And I mean, in Canada, it literally was made illegal.
Yeah, there you go.
As it should be.
Cannot.
That's a good way to judge something. Like, is it legal in Canada? It's sort of like if I'm going to eat this thing, and it's like that sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
Do doctors warn pregnant women not to eat that? Because if they do, maybe you shouldn't eat it. That's interesting. Okay, so I think this is the opt-out model, right?
It's negative option billing. It's we're doing this unless you tell us specifically not to.
Yeah, and that should be illegal. That's
after the fact.
That's
awful. And this is what Microsoft was going to do with recall, right? They called it opt-out, but when you signed in, you were in, and then you had to go find the UI to turn it off. And I can assure you, they were not going to advertise it. So that's that's terrible. Now they're not going to do that anymore, thank God. But they are doing it at LinkedIn apparently, so not great. But again, at least you can turn it off. But not great. I think last week we talked about Microsoft's little security summit. That went great. They reached no agreement whatsoever. And a week has gone by now. Microsoft is bragging about how much progress they've made on security. They're very happy with themselves. This is another one of those look at the calendar thing, except this time, instead of being April 1st, I have to look and see if it's 2002 again, because Microsoft is really talking up security, and they made this claim right up front. They describe this as the largest cybersecurity engineering effort in history, not its history.
Yeah.
Okay, in history. And as proof of that claim, they say they've dedicated the equivalent of 34,000 full-time engineers to this process, which means they have not dedicated 34,000 full-time engineers. They are telling every single person that works at Microsoft that they need to spend some iota of time on this. And then they did the math, and that's what it worked out to.
Yeah.
And so the way I would judge this is that in 2002, Microsoft shut down the development of all of their core platforms until they solved this problem for months. And they didn't shut down anything this time. So.
And arguably didn't actually solve that many problems. I do know, because I've heard the screams, that a lot of folks, especially those who develop demo apps and those kinds of things, are really struggling with, hey, how do I follow these rules? And to me, the upside to this is this process will become more streamlined because there will be lynchings. Like eventually the fact that you can't achieve your job means you go hunt down the people that are impairing you.
It's one of the ways they'll actually review you each year. And
it's how WPF got fixed, right? Like until Microsoft bet on WPF with Visual Studio, WPF was a limper. Like
it was just hanging out there.
Yeah, it was just hanging. And so the fact that they're forcing a group of very influential Microsoft employees, like the folks that are largely the advocates of those sorts of folks, to follow the security rules they've been telling us we should follow, means all of those mechanisms should get streamlined. Like, I don't disagree that conditional access is the right way to go, that managed identities are the right way to go. But if you ever tried to do it, like, it's hard. And you need to make it easy.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, at some point, it's gonna. This is like the advice you give young people. Let you take out a certain whatever percent you can from your paycheck. Have it go into your retirement savings. Maybe your company matches, and you just don't notice it's gone because you've never gotten the check in the first place.
You never saw it in the first place.
You get paid what you get paid, right? And hopefully that will be the experience for Microsoft employees at some point. But right now it's I make fun of it in a way because it's kind of my nature, but it does seem like they are serious about it. But they were serious about it in 2002. The part I don't know is how and when it just fell off a cliff again, right? And I suspect it was not one thing at one time. I think
that's the whole thing is like it needs to make progress in a couple of months until quarterlies come up. As soon as you're going to miss your quarterlies, you'll start bypassing the process. Like that's what undermined code. You talking about 2002 and how it impacted .NET. We got all this code signing authentication mechanisms built into code, and nobody could actually make it work. Like it was not deployable, and so we learned to bypass it.
Right.
And that's the real thing here: is can you make a workflow where someone gets to deliver their thing on time? Because if you can't, then they will find another way.
If AI was just smart enough, it could just solve this problem.
AI is not this smart.
Right.
Let's be clear. AI is not smart at all. That's not a thing.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. I'm being sarcastic.
The new AI is supposed to be smart.
Sure.
Reasons. It reasons.
It reasons.
It reasons.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Exactly.
Can't solve that, though. That's for sure.
Yeah. The problem with all this stuff is this is all made by people. People are imperfect, and
people.
And now we have AI doing the technological version of inbreeding, which is training on itself. It's just you can almost. I mean, you don't have to be a scientist to sort of understand the problem here, but we'll see. We shall see. Google. So a couple of just quick, I guess, AI. This section at one point, it had like 7 things in the title. I was like, I need to break this out a little bit more. It's a little stupid, but a couple of AI things from outside of Microsoft. Google, of course, has Gemini. There's a weird thing, we joke and talk about how there are so many things called Copilot in the Microsoft space. We feel that there will be consolidation right over time. Google is doing the same thing with Gemini in some ways. And if you think about it, as an individual or as a business, you could subscribe to Gemini Advanced. You can get it with, I bought a new Pixel. I got a year of Gemini Advanced for some reason and 2 terabytes of storage. I mean, they almost gave me the phone for nothing. It's stupid, but you can do. I think there are similar deals for Chromebook Plus devices. There are different levels of this stuff that you get for free, depending on just anybody, individual, business, whatever. Some things you have to either pay for, or maybe you get it with some premium device purchase, whatever it is. And then there must be a matrix somewhere, just like there is for Microsoft 365 and for Copilot. Like, this is where these things are, and I couldn't even. There's no brain on earth that can comprehend all of this, but. They just announced this past week or this week that there will be a standalone Gemini app, not Gemini Advanced, but just Gemini, because we have to have a different level of this, that will be free for business customers at Google, regardless of the level. So if you're workplace, business, enterprise, or frontline, you will get this. And so there are going to be degrees of it. To date, Google has charged $29.99 or $30 a month, just like Microsoft, right, for their Copilot, Gemini. I think Gemini Advanced, essentially. I think in the workspace world, they probably call it something add-on or whatever. But they have different tiers. So now they have another tier, the free tier. So, I think the AI stuff is going to filter out the way we've been talking, where we have these special AI things. Features will kind of come down market. We see that in the hardware space, like Google will put out features on Pixel and then say, well, we'll put this out on Android, or Microsoft had the single audio effect that was in Windows Studio Effects. Now works on any PC. You don't even need an NPU, right? They can do a software version off the CPU. That's, it's better if you have an NPU, but if you don't, it still works, So I think this is kind of them working through that same problem. So
I still wonder if there's a standardized interface for all of this, right? Like that we will know that any software that wants an NPU can use that NPU.
Yeah.
That's always the question. Is like whose software works with this?
Yeah. So right. So new phones, like new computers, have NPUs and different types of NPUs, different levels of performance and so forth. The very newest phones, iPhone and Android, right, have on-device SLMs, as I would call them, but most don't. And then in this range of features, some work against the cloud, some work local, and eventually, like you're suggesting, I think we'll have some that will work local, but against different chips, depending on what you have, et cetera. And then they'll do the hybrid thing. And this is I wish I could retire right now. It's a mess. It's like just trying to understand this is like so.
No, this is when we need you more than ever.
Yeah,
I know.
Can't quit.
My kind of mental is perfect for this, but I will also. I mean, I'll just I really hyper focus on. I could go nuts on this. Like it is a matrix.
It's going to be interesting. We live in interesting times, and I think it's going to be very interesting.
And it changes all the time. And I one of the whatever you think of AI, anybody who's listening or watching, it's happening, right? Whether you care about it or not, and it's happening so fast, and things change all the time. I made a joke about this earlier. I was just talking about the UI for Copilot. It's ludicrous, but we went from having no Copilot to having 4 different types of UI for Copilot, and now it's a year later.
And how many names?
Yeah.
And you and I know, because we're quietly admitted to, like, there's a couple of hundred Copilots under the hood. They're not going to let out into the world.
That's right.
And the world is better for it. But,
exactly.
Uncle Satch, I think, did the right thing, back in the day when he told the whole company, hey, go focus on this API and show us something. And they all did. And they learned a ton. And now they're sort of consolidating that mess.
It's interesting, we talk about Stevie Batish, we talk about Build last year, not this past year, but 2023. We talk about the 3 app models for AI, the first one being Copilot, this side-by-side UI. And we actually see this model everywhere, even though it's not always that explicit. Mm-hmm. A lot of browser makers are using a sidebar pane, right? Brave does this, Google does this, Microsoft does this, obviously.
Arc does it, yeah.
Arc does it, yeah. So it's sitting there next to the thing you're doing, and they kind of interact, right? This isn't in the notes, and I didn't pay too much attention to this, but Mark Bernioff at Salesforce.com, they had I think it's Dreamforce, their show this week, and was making fun of Copilot and the very notion of Copilot, and that this is not the right model. This was always going to be temporary. But when you Google positions everything they do as helpful, and so whether it's it doesn't matter what the UI is in a way. It might matter that you will or will not see it depending on the device or subscription or whatever you have. But Apple's kind of following a similar model. You're going to be in an email app. You're going to be in a messaging app. You're going to be wherever you are, anywhere you're creating content, and things will pop up. And he compared, it's a little too perfect, because I think Microsoft's been kind of patting itself on the back for the whole Copilot thing. But he basically said, how is this different from Clippy?
Nice.
Right? It's a fair point.
It is.
It's a fair point.
It's better than Clippy, though.
It is, but it's also 25 years later, and yikes. We're still
I just ran Copilot to summarize your show notes.
Yes.
And then I can ask a follow-up question. And you briefly covered LinkedIn using AI. Mm-hmm. So I asked, tell me more about this. And then there's a lot of detail in here.
And
I have follow-up questions.
Yeah, so what you're doing here is actually I think, personally, one of the best uses of AI.
Yeah.
And, I don't work at a big company where I'm getting 20-page memos or anything like that. But I could imagine going into someone sends you a document or presentation, whatever the heck it is, or just a recording of a meeting. It's guys, I just need the gist of this. I'm not going to sit here and listen to this. One thing I actually already do, which I guess technically is AI, is I'll download a video because like the Intel presentation, I wanted to go through it again from IFA. I didn't want to spend the time to watch it, right? But you grab the transcript of it instead, which was generated by AI. And that's another form of breaking something down into a way that's more digestible. And it is good at that because we're talking about, it's a finite thing. So it's pretty good. And then fun graphics. It's kind of good for that, I guess. But
do you do all your graphics with Copilot now, or?
Yeah, so this was a tip I had maybe a month or so ago, but it coincides with me getting rid of Copilot Pro, which is I was paying for this thing, and the one use I got out of it on a very regular basis was I would create these graphics for the website. And this isn't why I was paying exactly, but if you did the free version, they were square images, not 16 by 9. I need widescreen images, and they can't always crop a square image properly. And they were also higher quality and faster speed, and you had more tokens and whatever that kind of stuff was. Well, it's a lot better now. And if you go to designer.microsoft.com and say, I want to create an image, they'll give you a choice of 3 aspect ratios. And the image quality is exactly the same as it was when I was paying. So I don't pay for it anymore because why would I?
Why? Why should you?
So it depends. So yeah, it's interesting. The idea of something that is there next to you to help you. It's weird. I never drew this Clippy thing, although I turned that thing off immediately. I hated it. So maybe that's why my brain didn't go there. But as soon as I heard that, I was like, yeah, he's a good point. So obviously it's more sophisticated, but it looks like you're trying to write a letter. Can I help? I mean, it is the same basic problem it's trying to solve, right?
Yeah.
It's more sophisticated, but
you would hope it's more sophisticated, but but in the end, you still have the real issue with Clippy was the interruption, right?
That's right.
That I'm working here and you're bothering me.
Yeah, I need to look into this more and write more about this. We glossed over a little bit last week. I think it was last week or the week before, when Microsoft had their Copilot Wave 2 event, because there was so much of it. It's kind of hard to kind of keep track of it all. But I had said, I had heard about a rebranding of some sort coming before this show, before this event. And I was like, they're not going to get rid of like the Copilot brand, right?
That would be crazy.
And they're not. But one of the problems with AI, one of the many problems, is like just all the new terminology. Like even people who are technical and understand this world that we're in, I think can struggle with some, and I certainly do anyway, with some of the language. And one of the weird isms of Copilot was that for a little while on the consumer side, and I think still on the business side, you could create what they called custom GPTs, which is a really stupid name for something, And I sort of wondered, why would they just call these things custom Copilots? And I think the answer is that they're not always Copilots. They're not always something that runs there and it's something that goes off and does this thing for you and then comes back with that thing. And that's an agent, right? So this is a agent bot.
An agent's a very hip term right now.
Yeah, and but it's another good term. Like you kind of get it. Like, okay, it's like something working on your behalf. I like it. Like a bot, I guess, kind of satisfies that name, like a need or whatever.
Well, and Microsoft makes 2 products. They make a Copilot Studio, which is actually grouped in the Power Platform group. So it sort of gives you a case for what it's for. And then the AI Studio, which to me is orthogonal to Visual Studio. It's not that it's for software developers per se, but it is for data engineering and data analytics types who want to build their own machine models. And then you can surface that through Copilot Studio.
Yeah. They have, I don't know the names of these tools, but also part of the Power Platform group. They've had like a bot builder capability.
Well, yeah, that's the old one, right?
That's the old one. So it's okay.
The bot framework is what
bot framework. That's right.
Yeah, my favorite version of that was the FactBot, where you literally aimed it at a fact site and it just gave natural language around it, but in a Siri caliber capability.
Yeah,
terms were very important. One would argue that the biggest thing that LLMs really brought to the table was the tokenization mechanism, so that it's very a language agnostic.
Yep.
That you can say, we were working on an interview for someone, a case study on this, the actual applied product, and they were doing insurance policies. And one of the big points they saw with the LLM is when the customer was saying, hey, I need insurance for my Sea-Doo, You didn't have to remember that's a watercraft, right? When you had said it would find the watercraft policies.
Yeah, this is a programming topic, and maybe should be for later. But there was a fascinating article in the Register recently, which is a sentence I don't usually get to say, but there was, and it was the second part of a 2-part series or whatever, and they were talking about the future of AI and software development, and they were saying, right now it's a Copilot scenario. You've got a block of code, or an app or project, whatever it is, and maybe it looks at the code, maybe it does that IntelliSense thing, sort of where it recommends some things, or you can change this, or at some point this thing will become sophisticated enough where it will be, it's kind of a pass where you make sure there aren't any common errors or problems or security issues, whatever it might be. But as this evolves, eventually it will be AI kind of doing this thing. Right. And one of the, this is fascinating to me. We talk about putting Rust in the kernel, whether it's Linux or Windows, or Azure, or whatever. And this is a human process. There are people, or engineers, geniuses who are doing this work. At some point, AI will just do this. One of the things AI can do right now is, here's a block of code. It's written in C++. Spit me out a C# version of this. Right. Well, here's the Windows kernel. Spit it out in Rust. It sounds ludicrous, and maybe it is, but I mean, eventually it's going to happen. Well, and Russinovich read that statement very publicly, where he said, any Windows engineer has to justify to me writing any more C++ in the kernel versus Rust. Yeah, there you go. Right, it's. I know a lot of people poo-poo AI, and I do to some degree as well. And I think the impact maybe in, I don't know, productivity sense is going to be minor in the sense that we have been getting these kind of advances just through. We've been on the Gartner hype cycle for a while now, and we're still hurling down the slope of disillusionment, right? I don't think we've bottomed out yet, but we're down there. The peak the peak of overinflated expectations has long passed. Yeah, fair enough. I don't know what peanut means in the emoji thing. I don't know. I don't know. Could AI solve that one for me? I don't know. I'm again, this story about the Apple's requirements for the iPhone, it just speaks to, you didn't know this in advance. You said AI before you knew what it meant. What is the requirement? So the base requirement on day one, when this thing ships, is going to be 4 gigs of storage on the device. But that will only go up. So as Apple releases new features, the storage requirement's going to go up and up and up, because a lot of this will be SLMs sitting on the device. This is the kind of uncharted territory. We see this on phones, the newer iPhones and Android phones, Pixel especially, and Samsung. We see it with the Copilot Plus PCs. We're going to see it with these, or are now, I guess, seeing it with the new AMD and Intel-based Copilot Plus PCs. Eventually, this will just be PCs, right? People have been writing stories for years. You get a laptop with 120 gigs free of Windows or storage space, and you only have Windows on it, and there's 96 gigs free. Well, a couple of years from now, it's going to be 75. It's going to be a lot, because we're going to take up the space. At some point, we just need to have space that's just for this, that we don't even count, because it's going to be so stupidly off. Yeah, I did get a terabyte iPhone, and now I'm glad. Yeah, that's why when I bought the Surface, crazy, though. It does, doesn't it? You said the word terabyte phone. Terabyte phone. On the phone. And some of that, initially, I thought, well, maybe for video and photography, but now I'm thinking, no, it's AI just that's one whole language model. There you go. Yeah, I just I'm sending in an iPhone on trade today, and I just pulled off the photos. And at first it said, it was you don't have enough storage on your computer for this. I'm like, wait, what? So I looked at it, and of course it's an Apple device, so they've synced every photo that's ever been in iCloud to the thing for some reason. Okay. So I had to go back to, I think it was September last year. I just pulled those photos off, but even then there's still redundant, duplicates in there. It's on the phone story, my Pixel 9 is supposed to arrive today. Oh, nice. The current swelling on my phone somehow is relatively low. Your Pixel 9, which you had trouble finding. No, I didn't have trouble finding the 9. I couldn't find the 9 Pro. I gave up on getting a Pro. But it's arriving before your Snapdragon. Oh, yeah. Easily.
Well, the Snapdragon device arrived 5 days ago, right? Supposedly, except it's shipping today. But now
I should ask the Pixel 9 why the Snapdragon is not coming.
There you go.
Maybe it knows.
Don't ask. It doesn't know what a Snapdragon is.
It might have friends in the business.
But yeah, I don't know if you were following this, Leo, because you weren't here for a couple of weeks, but my coming back from the last trip, the Pixel 6 started to grow outward.
He flew to Europe
good-
with a
it's good
phone
you're
that looked
getting
like a beach ball.
No,
and he was like, "No, this is
Surprised
okay."
they let you
It's
on.
fine.
This is
No,
okay.
I've been on a plane when a phone was smoking and they pulled out the little kit.
He's like,
They got a
to
couple
scroll
of
from the
box
top
of
of the
sand
screen. You
is
actually have to go over the top of the roundness of the phone.
it's a box that looks like an ammo box with a locking lid.
Yeah, well,
And
it's by the way-
inside of is a pair of oven mitts,
That's-
and the lady came out and picked up the phone and put it in there, and then they filled it with water and then locked the lid.
Isn't it sad that we have to have such things?
Yeah, I like that they do have such things.
Yeah, I am
like
too.
That they have a
Glad.
complete.
Yeah.
It did not even interrupt the flight. If you were not sitting up front where it happened, you would never have known it happened.
Get
they
the
have-
oven mitts, Maud. We got
They
another
have
one.
One of
It's really
those that will fit
no
over
different.
it. What about like a version of that for a nuclear power plant? Does that
There you
exist?
go. Yeah, sure.
Sweet.
I forgot you did a whole talk on nuclear power.
I did.
didn't
That's
you?
why I was
You're
strongly
kind
opinionated about
you're an
these
expert.
details.
So, in your opinion, is it safe and is something we should move forward with?
I would not move forward with those 2+ reactor designs. They're just taking advantage of the fact that thing's already built and
It's
got
already
maybe
done.
a few
Yeah.
years of runtime.
Yeah.
The plants that are really interesting that are being matured right now are the small modular. And the main thing is that they separate the real dangerous part, which is the fuel handling, from the operation of the reactor. So
As
you
it
build
should
these,
be. Yeah.
you build these reactors small enough that you can move them on big trucks,
Right.
and you bring them into your production site. You have a dozen of them or 20 of them. Each one generates 150 to 300 megawatts. They run for 2 years as a sealed product. Then you haul them out and set them off for reprocessing and replace them.
It's kind of like what you put on a nuclear sub or something like that.
Yeah, it's similar to that, except those ones run with different conditions and can run for 20 years. These are
Right.
only 2.
Right.
But to me, the biggest thing is coming from the tech industry. If you're replacing a reactor every 2 years instead of every 50, continuous upgrades.
Right.
Right.
Like you're
Oh, it's,
always making
it's
a better reactor.
Continuous innovation.
Yeah, well, you're now creating a central repository to do all of that work where they do have the resources to continue to improve the design.
Nice.
And then putting it out to more places. But the bigger thing here is every other power generation method, even coal, has gotten cheaper over time, and nuclear power has gotten more expensive. And that's really like, why did they turn off
the
reactor
real
1 at 3
trend.
Mile Island in
Right.
2019?
It's
Because
too
it was
costly.
too expensive to run.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
Well, and
you've
that's the
got
good news.
to turn that on its head.
That's the good news on solar is it's getting cheaper and cheaper.
Incredibly cheap,
Yeah.
right?
We just need
And-
ways to store it overnight.
Well, there's that, and there's a few solutions there. But the bigger thing with solar is that you don't have to build the whole power plant at once.
Right.
Is that you lay down a few megs,
Yeah.
get it
It's the-
working on the
it's-
grid, and then you add to it over time. And that's the same thing, by the way, you could do with modular.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The same.
That's what Bill Gates is investing in, right? Those sodium cooled reactors.
He wants to do a little weirder things, stuff that's more experimental. But it's fun to be a billionaire where you can just throw money at stuff like that. Like apparently every tech billionaire has a favorite fusion project. It's a hip thing. That's what they talk about. That's what they talk about in the Billionaires Club. It's like, what fusion project
Could
have
you
you
just
got?
go to the golf course?
Yeah.
God,
Nope.
You know,
give it a rest.
in the early days, Bill Gates put a lot of money into Cialis, and I think that paid off well for him. So now it's
Maybe a little too well.
reactors. Yeah,
A little
maybe,
too well.
maybe a little too well.
Yeah.
I mean, let's take a little break because I do want to talk about this Intel Qualcomm rumor. I think it's fascinating, and I would love to get
Yeah, I do too.
your take on this. But before we do that, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Big ID. Now, we were talking generative AI. Big ID is the partner you need if you want to move forward in your business with Gen AI. Big ID's Gen AI solutions really help you navigate this kind of perilous, labyrinthine world of AI from the CISO perspective. The perspective you care about, right? Security. With Big ID and privacy, you can leverage solutions that take a defense-in-depth approach to automating manual processes, to improving accuracy and actionability, to applying AI and ML to cut through the noise, to improve risk management and enable a robust data security strategy. So AI can really be a big help here, and Big ID is the team you want to help you do it. They let you find and classify. This is very important. Find and classify your data accurately and at scale on whether it's on-prem or in the cloud whether it's structured or unstructured or semi-structured data, covering hundreds of data sources, so that you train that AI only on data that's safe to use. You also minimize your attack surface through policy-driven retention management by removing redundant and outdated data so that you don't actually train with it, right? Plus, why store it if you don't need it? You can audit and inspect the data that's being shared with AI. You can be alerted to breaches. And some of the biggest companies in the world use Big ID for exactly this purpose. Telenor, the big Norwegian telecom company, uses Big ID to show their customers they're handling data in a secure way. This has become a big job for telecom. Telenor says, quote, "We want to focus on the business and have a partner like Big ID to focus on the tech. We wanted a partner that understood what we're doing and that can help us. Companies who use," this is the important quote, "companies who use Big ID are showing they're taking data seriously. Customers love to hear that. Your boss loves to hear it. It's a very important issue these days." In fact, so important, you're going to want to go to their exclusive CISO Digital Summit. You don't have to go anywhere. It's a virtual summit. It's coming up October 17th, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It's centered around, quote, "the next era of data security." Okay, this virtual summit will feature deep dives into the latest data security practices and technologies. They'll explore everything from DSPM to AI to DLP and beyond, with expert-led panel sessions and interactive discussions with your peers. Great lineup of speakers, too, including the keynote. I love this. It's the head of cybersecurity and compliance at Denny's. And it's not just a restaurant. I mean, these guys, they've got a big job. By the way, you can get 2 CPE credits and a raffle entry for attending, and you don't have to leave your desk. It's virtual. So be sure to tune in. Strengthen your organization's security posture in an ever-evolving digital landscape. The summit, the CISO Digital Summit from Big ID, is October 17th, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You don't have to remember that. You just have to remember one thing: bigid.com/Windows. Start protecting your sensitive data wherever your data lives. bigid.com/Windows. Lots of information there. You can get a free demo to see how Big ID can help your organization reduce the data risk and accelerate the adoption of generative AI. bigid.com/Windows. Also, a lot of really valuable informational stuff there. There's a free new report they just put up that provides valuable insights and key trends in AI adoption, challenges, the overall impact of Gen AI across organizations, something you need to know for sure. bigid.com/Windows. We thank them so much for supporting Windows Weekly, and we thank you for supporting us by going there, especially using that URL, bigid.com/Windows. All right, let's talk about you talk about the register, Paul. What the register called just a non-starter because of the cross-licensing deals with AMD. Can Qualcomm, they've got the money or they got the stock value, can they buy Intel?
Yeah, but so Bloomberg and I think was it Reuters or the Wall Street Journal? I guess
the Journal had the scoop.
Okay,
and
the
then
recent
Bloomberg
one.
confirmed it with their own sources.
Yeah, so
as did Ming-Chi Kuo, by the way, of all people. Yeah.
Depending on what you read, part of this would involve them selling off something.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, they don't have the
they're not
cash to do it.
They're not going to take all of Intel. It would be a kind of a multi-pronged thing. So the discussion around Intel to me is what Intel is today and what Intel hopes to be in the future, right? And in the idealized version of the future from Pat Gelsinger, this is a company that designs and builds chips, and builds chips not just for itself, but for others.
Right. But I don't expect that foundry business would survive on its own for long. That's what Qualcomm would grab.
Right. Yeah. That's where I was going. So the part that designs x86 chips, which is the part that owns those patents that Leo mentioned and whatever other IP, is in many ways the least consequential part of this transaction, right?
But also the one tangled up in all these legal constraints and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. That's what the register said, that those licensing deals with AMD go out the window as soon as there's an acquisition. That's part of the deal.
That's interesting. Okay.
So they'd have to renegotiate all of those cross-licensing deals.
Only if
mean,
they took the patents.
If they wanted it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they wanted
Maybe
it.
they don't want x86.
So-
you think they don't want the foundry business? They want the
No,
fabs?
I think they want I think they want the foundry business.
I think they want the
which
foundry.
yeah.
That's the point.
Because Qualcomm is a foundry business, right? That's
Right.
And patent.
Well,
by the way,
the-
at least half of Qualcomm's revenue is from patents. So maybe they just want the patents.
I'm not sure if that's half, but it's a
It's a
chunk.
huge
It's a big
portion
chunk.
of it. It maybe has changed now that they actually.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite half, but it's
Competitive chips.
it is a big chunk. If Intel is successful and the government, the United States government is playing a role here to make it be successful, that would be the business that's lucrative, right? Not the x86 chip design thing. When Qualcomm started making ARM chips for PCs, many years ago now, because they actually worked on this for Windows 8 originally, one of the things they couldn't do was use any of that IP to emulate. They had to do clean room, their own kind of thing. They can't. There's certain x86 opcodes or whatever that you just can't. You just can't use them. Intel will go after you. They're very aggressive about it. That's why they had that issue with AMD. But I mean, maybe they're at the point now where they don't need them. Part of if you accept the fact that x86 is legacy essentially, and that they can now emulate that really, really well.
Well, and the U.S. government made AMD come into existence because they didn't want a sole provider for x86 from Intel, right? This was already a government construct. You can use a government construct to unravel it too.
Yep. So we'll see. But there were rumors a month or so ago that they had been talking about buying part of Intel. Now it's like we're gonna, it's Intel. It's not, but it's not really Intel. Like it's not all of Intel. No one has said this explicitly, but my guess, and I think we all agree on this, is that what they're going after is that foundry business.
They want the fabs.
Yeah. And this is sort of like when you look at Google with antitrust, and I know it's years down the road and anything could happen, but if the government actually orders that company broken up.
Revenue comes from QTL.
Okay.
Am I talking? Oh,
You are.
sorry.
Yeah.
I thought I was muted. I was just asking Gemini.
Oh,
Because it'll know.
yeah. Qualcomm Technology Licensing, is that what it
Yeah,
is?
that's their licensing side.
So, sorry, I lost track. So if there was some version of Google in the future,
20
where
to
they said-
30% is what Gemini says.
that sounds about right.
Yeah.
You take out ads, just do that one thing and say, you can have all the other stuff you have. You're a technology company. Congratulations. That company is diminished to a degree that you wouldn't even recognize this company anymore. It goes from being one of the top 3 or 5 or whatever companies in the world by value to being nothing. 70% of the revenues come directly from ads.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean they disappear. It doesn't mean whatever, but they become a vastly diminished company. Now, there are other ways to separate that company out, whatever, we'll see. But if you think about Intel as just a company that designs x86 chips for PCs that are now made by, other company or manufactured by other companies, I guess. I mean, what are we talking about here? This is they've lost. They have nothing to give to the mobile world. They already sold off the important bits there. They have, I guess, Mobileye or whatever, but they are failing in the data center. They're pretty much just PC. And I don't know if you're following this hyper growth market that is the PC, but this is not a big future there. So that's a vastly diminished company. The real future of Intel is the foundry. Intel, of course, they have shareholders, right? So if people can cash out and that's part of the deal, I think a lot of their shareholders would be okay with that. But from the perspective of people at Intel, I'm sure, leadership anyway.
Well, of course, Intel stock went up and Qualcomm stock went down on this.
Yes. Yep.
Everybody thought, good deal for Intel.
Talk
Not
about
such a good deal for Qualcomm.
Talk about an anchor. My God, is there a bigger anchor in this industry than Intel? Jeez.
Let's take that off.
Intel's strength has been vertical integration because they largely invented a lot of this industry. The fact that they've always had all the pieces, so they didn't have a choice. The question is this now legacy and actually an impediment to progress?
That was Nokia's strength too, and they're gone as a mobile.
So the thing is, like, you're seeing this. At the same time, SpaceX is vertically integrated and it's considered a strength, right? Like, one would argue in industries of true innovation, vertical integration is important, and that we're not seeing that much innovation here anymore. Right. And so optimization is more important.
Even if we did, right? What if what if somehow Intel innovates to some degree that's crazy? They do something that's amazing. It's just like better than anything Apple's doing, whatever. We're talking about a market that's, selling
Kind
a
of
couple
saturated.
100 million computers. It's just not.
Well,
it's just
and they have tried C-Itanium and been punished for it. C-Itanium, right? Like
That's right.
The bottom line is at the moment that they couldn't make a new chip, that it was that their customers rejected them. Arguably, they should have reorganized at that point to say, okay, it's commodity business.
This was the problem I had when Vista came out, and I thought, I hope this doesn't prevent some future Microsoft or Windows team from shooting for the stars again, because they really went for it and they cratered. And I thought, man, this company is never, or this part of the company, which was the company, right, is never going to take risks again, And then they did Windows 8, and I was like, all right, maybe I should just shut up because, geez, like sometimes.
But they did not do that willingly. Like that was they were bullied into it. Because the alternative was Microsoft going all ARM then, which, one would argue shouldn't
maybe
they have?
was the,
Yeah.
So we'll see. But a lot of people instantly kind of poo-poo this Qualcomm Intel thing. This is one way.
You've got to
address
face
the
the
regulatory
issue.
issues either.
But those
regulatory,
are,
it
it can be done, right? But the reality is this is an archaic business now.
The reality is this is roadkill, and there are vultures circling, and someone's going to get it. So you want it to be a U.S. company.
As long as you don't dump it in Central Park with a broken bicycle.
Who does that? Nobody does that.
I don't think anybody does that, but that's a different story. The other thing that's come up since then is that a company called Apollo Global Management, which is a private equity firm,
and a fairly famous one.
They're the biggies. Yeah.
They've previously kind of bailed out.
They put the P in
Western
private
Digital.
equity. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know.
what
Probably.
that means. I don't know what that means.
So they've said, look, keep Intel whole. We'll invest $5 billion. They're going to want someone on the board, probably, right? They're going to want some chunk, whatever it is, that more of the company than they paid for, that kind of thing. But it might be worth it to Intel. Now they'd have to go through board and investors, and we'll have to see. But that might be an option. I'll just say, $5 billion sounds like a lot of money, but I mean, their recent smallest chips thing is worth, I think it was $8 billion. So
any given fab is a $10 billion proposition, right? Like,
I mean, their total investment cost of this restructuring is $100 billion.
Yeah, that's why 5 didn't seem like.
It's like 5 is like
thanks, like for nothing, buds.
Yeah.
Maybe they need their free cash. Maybe they need.
It's like someone asked for change for 20, and you're like, I got a 5. Do you want that?
Nice.
You're like, how does that work?
But Apollo is not like a tech industry fixated investment group, right? They're in Cadobo and like Citigroup and all kinds of different entities. So,
well, I mean, they've looked at this and said, look, there's some outcome here that makes sense for us.
Yeah. Well, including chopping it up for parts and selling off the parts, right? Like that's the kind of entity you're talking about.
Yep. I don't think that this is the thing. Like I said, ideally from Intel's perspective, but ideally, I guess in general, Intel remains whole and succeed. The design part succeeds, the fabs succeed.
The logical thing to happen to a company of this scale struggling is that you get activist investors.
Yep. The Carl Icahn types and them.
And what you're seeing there with a $5 billion lifeline is I would like to buy a seat on the board and be an activist investor.
Yeah,
here comes.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Whoever Apollo appoints isn't going to be a warm fuzzy.
They're not. Yes. Yeah.
Their slogan is
I don't know if you've watched
tomorrow
Succession,
today. It could be investing in yesterday tomorrow. Maybe that would be
Their slogan should be Succession, but it's real.
Yeah. Given that Intel takes that money, I can't imagine they don't.
Yeah.
Whoever that board seat looks like that, pay attention to that person because that person's going to come in with a hammer.
That's probably right. I think you kind of nailed it. That's probably the cost of a board seat, right?
So this is going to happen. If it's Qualcomm, it's going to happen. If it's this, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So
even it could easily be Apollo saying we're in this to get the Qualcomm deal through.
There you go.
Right? Like you're talking about weaponizing here.
We shouldn't lose sight of the fact too that Intel has actually been moving toward this outcome on its own. Right?
Yes.
They have been reporting the foundry financials as if it were a separate business, and then their actual plan now is subsidiary, which is a half step, 50% of the way toward just spinning it out. Right. So
Well, and so, Pat could
heading
be in on this too. It's like, I can't seem to move people forward. Let's go get a hawk on the board that rattles the cage, that could push me to do the thing I want to do all along.
This is going to be a slight exaggeration, but let me see if I can find this, because it's kind of hard to find stuff on my site because it's terrible. Let's see. So you talk about like chip design businesses, although I guess arguably, and so here are the extremes. NVIDIA, right? Briefly, the biggest company in the world. I think today probably the third biggest company in the world.
Oh, merely.
Right. So they're that's one extreme, and then we have ARM on the other extreme, or maybe even Raspberry Pi, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But ARM is quarterly revenues of less than $1 billion. So somewhere between $1 billion and
a trillion.
Just earnings. Earnings is just earnings is probably two to 300 billion, whatever the numbers for NVIDIA. That's the world that this Intel business could live in, but it's going to be on the ARM side. It's not going to be on the big. You know what I mean?
Like, this is not a too big to fail scenario. This is a too old to live without scenario.
Yeah, it's almost like too big not to be split up scenario, right?
Yeah. Well, again,
and you think the regulators in the U.S. will say, "Yeah, you know what?
Oh no, I think they're going to kick up a huge fuss. But the alternative is the company fails.
Right. They're also going to get a directive, probably from the White House or whatever, that like this thing is a national security. We have to make this happen.
American chips have to happen.
It has to be a United States-based company.
That's a good point.
It's also in the,
Is Qualcomm still in the U.S.? They were in San Diego.
Yeah, they are.
Are they still? Okay.
Yeah, they are. They're from
All right.
Well, and one would argue they will move faster than Intel was able to establish the elements that the U.S. government wants.
Right.
You want fabs in country. You want skill sets matured. You want assets locked down. Fine.
Right.
You do what you got to do. Right. And again, Apollo coming to the table, they're going to bring their regulator guy with them. Right. They're going to bring the guy who's got friends on the FTC.
Yep.
If you bring the skill set that's necessary to be able to move all those pieces into play.
So this might be good news, in other words.
Well, holding still is the only bad news.
Yeah,
right.
Intel, they could have escaped this problem by just moving quicker 10 years ago. Microsoft has been begging them not to do this, to not do what they've done, not to do what they did. Not that Microsoft necessarily was saying you need to build out your fabs and modernize there, but that should have been obvious. That should have been obvious. I mean, as these nanometer designs go down and down and down, and Intel they were stuck on 14 nanometer for years. Yeah, and I don't remember the numbers anymore, but it was like 7 to 5 to 4. Like they were just behind.
If your clock was tick-tocking like this, you'd get it replaced.
All right, so none of the remaining stories in this section have anything to do with each other. So just quickly, I'll just say the Arc browser.
It's a potpourri.
It's a Europe is a bouillabaisse of cultures, foods, and smells. So the browser company, which makes Arc, just reported their first major security incident. It happened in August. Fortunately, everything went right. The security researchers that discovered it alerted the company. They worked together to fix it. No one said anything about it until it was fixed, and it was never exploited in the wild. And now they're also saying all the right things about getting their processes up to speed on that kind of stuff. And so it's a small company. I think they can be really goofy sometimes. They make an awesome product, but I feel like their response to this was really good. So we'll see what comes out.
They got a good CISO who did the right thing.
Yeah, they did the right thing. They did, crowdsource obviously screwed up bad, but they, getting him credit for showing up.
You did, I didn't have Troy Hunt showing up going, anybody know anyone at Arc?
This guy's going to be like the guy above the water where you throw the beanbag at the thing. Like that's going to be his job for the rest of his life. But like he'll always have to deal with that. But they actually did do the right thing.
Yeah, I know. And it's the whole thing. Like you've screwed up when Troy Hunt is asking for a contact at your company.
So Raspberry Pi started, it started in, I think, 2008, 2009, first product 2012-ish. They make single board computers, right? Leah was asking about what percentage, Qualcomm technology licensing was, and it's whatever percent. If you asked me 2 days ago, how do these guys make money? I'm like, they sell single board computers. They do, but that's actually not where they make most of their money from. They also make these little compute modules that are basically smaller single board computers. That are used by IoT and manufacturing and all kinds of vertical markets. And that's actually most of their money. So there's a good business there. They're public now. They're on the London Stock Exchange, along with, I think, 7 or 8 other companies. And they are doing great. They, small numbers compared to ARM or whatever, but, it is what it was like. This was basically a charity at one point. So $34 million in profit. And yes, by the way, in dollars, even though they're like UK based, kind of odd. But on revenues of $144 million for the 6 months. This is not 3 months, not a quarter, it's a half year. But these are both big double-digit gains over the year before, 47 and 61% respectively. So they're doing great, and they're going to keep doing great according to their.
They're even listed on the LSE, and they report in U.S. dollars. That's messed up.
I know. I didn't. I was looking for an explanation of it.
Yeah.
Why would I don't know. I don't know what to say. So the Raspberry Pi single board computers, they sold 2.8 million units in the. I wrote a quarter in the store. It's a half year.
I can't tell you how many are in this room, right?
Yeah, it's fun.
A bunch.
Yeah, I love it. Right?
They're less expensive than Doritos, for God's sake. You can eat them as dip.
They're just as technologically advanced.
Yeah.
And
a little more
Doritos
crispy,
have slightly
honestly.
better. Yeah, they have better MPUs than a Dorito. If you get the orange one with the
I just
that
got
Taco Bell one.
I just
whatever
got
it's
the
called.
new one, and I'm very excited. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with it, but I got the nice case.
It makes a perfect pie hole, right? Like,
yeah, maybe that's what I'll use it for. I don't know. Yeah, but it's great to think.
I love that it exists. I love that they
$35 computer. I mean,
yeah, and it runs like a hot damn. You know what it runs great? Linux.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
it would actually run Windows pretty good if they would just
They used to. What happened? They used to offer it.
It was basically somewhere between IoT and normal. So it was for a single. The idea was there was no front end UI, but you could run an app. It was for an app. Right. So there was enough of Windows. So
I used to run a Python server on it, and then there was a SDK that would allow you to program Minecraft. So it was like a Minecraft edition of Windows.
So that thing you have, the 5, I believe it goes up to 8 gigs, right?
Yeah, I got
that thing would run desktop Windows pretty well.
I know.
Honestly.
I know.
It kind of kills me they don't.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. No, they're fantastic. I got 2 of them pinned to the wall under the stairs there that are my Pi hole 1 and 2.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, but I got the HA green on your recommendation. So
the green's sitting right beside it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the what?
Home Assistant Green. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all my server names are Southpaw characters. So,
nice.
Stan and Kyle are the the pie holes. Kenny is the green. Yeah.
I used to go with
and
James
the big
Bond,
file server
names.
is Cartman.
Oh,
yeah.
Obviously.
Oh.
Okay. So, and then I mentioned this last week briefly, but actually now I've done it. So that .NET Pad thing I mentioned, modernization project using the WPF stuff that Microsoft brought back is done. I'm not going to post the code to GitHub until they actually release .NET 9 because it requires it. Plus, you never know. There could be like a little last minute something.
We're in RC. You're pretty safe.
I know. No, I mean, maybe they'll actually fix some bugs and make it better. But
don't get crazy, Mr.
I know. I mean, I know it's not going to happen, but a boy can dream. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Let's do Xbox.
Yeah, we have some Xbox stuff. So the best news.
We need an Xbox Sting. I can't imagine what it is. Yeah,
an Xbox theme.
Just a Sting. Yeah,
it's Xbox time.
I think
who farted.
Yeah.
Or I could just combine them all. Right.
The sound of the nervous chewing of nails. For Xbox, I don't know. So there's I
think we need. It should be like a quote from Master Chief, right?
Yeah.
Like what would he say?
We're doomed.
Yeah, nice.
Something like that. I don't know. I just searched. I was trying to find the numbers for Xbox Live Gold back when that was a thing, and I couldn't. But in searching for that, I found all these articles I've written, and as recently as like last year, I was really bullish on Xbox, man. I thought they were going to nail it. And God, they talk about just face raking the entire time. It's just crazy. So there's a guy who writes for Bloomberg he wrote The Social Network, for example. So he has written a tell-all book about the history of Blizzard Entertainment, which was part of Activision Blizzard, right? That's the name. They merged in the early 2000s, 2006, 2007, something like that. And he spoke to over 300 current and former employees. Some great history in there. And one of the things they've kind of divulged before the book came out is that the reason that the co-founder and CEO of Blizzard left Activision was because of Bobby Kotick and how terrible he was, and that this guy like canceled this huge project they were making and then started putting his people inside of Blizzard to make it less independent, and they were pushing things like microtransactions and all this crap that they didn't want to do, and it was just a nightmare. So Microsoft kind of swooped in after all that misconduct and discrimination stuff happened, and hopefully still are cleaning it up, but then they fired hundreds of people, and it's like they shipped Diablo 4 I think a year ago, and I don't know what the numbers are. We don't really know exactly, but I mean some number of the guys that worked on that game are gone. Like it's so this book's about that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's coming out on October. Actually, is it October 8th? I think it is. Let me look.
That's what it says on your post, so I guess I'll have to believe you.
That's Patch Tuesday. So that's going to be a big day for Microsoft, guys.
All right, I'm adding it to my read list.
Yeah, the publisher sent me a copy, so I'll be able to review it in time for the release. I'm excited about this. I want to know, I'm probably going to read the back of it first because I want to see the Xbox Microsoft stuff, but very interesting. So, I mean, these guys, by the way, this is how long this company's been around. So in 1991, Bobby Kotick joined Activision. That's how long he was there. Mm-hmm. In 1991, the people that co-founded this company created Blizzard. And their first games were released on the Amiga and for MS-DOS. That's how far back they go.
Yeah.
StarCraft, right? Diablo, obviously. And then they did World of Warcraft, which was the big breakout hit.
Changed everything. That's the beginning of the Morgs.
Yeah.
It's also the greatest name ever. Play nice.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And then Microsoft today released or announced their September update for the Xbox, and the Xbox is kind of a tough thing. It kind of hits across all the different clients, the consoles. It's PC, mobile, whatever. But the big news is that on mobile, they're going to. It's not there right today, but in the next month or so, they're going to get rid of the standalone Game Pass app, which I'm not even sure where they had, and just put that stuff in the Xbox app on mobile. That's where it is on Windows, right? So they're going to make that more like the version of Windows, which I think makes a lot of sense. And that's good. And I'm trying to think what else is in here. There's some other stuff. There's the game bar can be in compact mode now, so that when you're playing on a small handheld, this thing will make sense. And it will show one widget at a time, so you can kind of cycle through them. It doesn't take up a lot of space on the screen. So that's available today. So that's kind of cool. And then they already announced Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, but now you can pre-order it. We know it's coming on November 19. We know all about the various editions of the game, how much they cost. Standard edition will be coming to Xbox Game Pass. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. Sorry. Game Pass Standard and also Game Pass Ultimate on day one, right, as part of that kind of perk. The thing that's crazy is if you've ever played Flight Simulator, the 2020 game, it's astonishing. Like, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
They're claiming...
And world complete and real time.
Yeah.
So you can... Well, it takes a lot of time to fly around.
This is making that game look like Minecraft by comparison. They're talking about a 4000x detail expansion where you can actually see individual pebbles and tiny stones and gravel and grass. God. And yeah, it's supposed to be insane. Now, the first thing I think of when I hear that is like, well, hold on a second. Call of Duty is like 160 gigs on my Xbox. Like, what is this going to look like? But actually, they're going to lean into the cloud streaming stuff for this. So the footprint on this thing is going to be 30 gigs. And then as you get like the world updates and whatever other updates they do, that's all just going to stream.
Part of me wonders why they're making this game.
Yeah.
I think because it feels like it's just an experiment. They're experimenting with what can we do with our data sets. They really just sort of having fun with it.
It didn't occur to me when they came out with this thing they just call Flight Simulator, but we call it 2020, that they would actually make another version and kind of, make them differently. Like, it seemed like they would just kind of update that. But of course, they actually, over the years, have made many different versions. So it is, in fact, in keeping. But yeah,
the first version of Microsoft Flight Simulator I played was in like 1980 on a TRS-80, right?
It was
at 127 by 47 ressorolution.
Yep. Yeah, the big deal, the thing that put that game over the top was when VGA happened.
Don't get crazy.
640 by 480, right? Like all of a sudden, oh my God, look at all the pixels.
And 4 whole colors.
Yeah. So there's that. That's good news. So I guess it's good news. Microsoft also announced this past week they're ending their Xbox Ambassadors program, which caused a little bit of scurrying on my part because I had to find out what it was. I never heard of it. And it turns out that it was a kind of almost a private program. Not that they didn't, you didn't know it existed, I guess, but they would pull people out of support communities and kind of reward them, much like they would do with MVPs and the rest of Microsoft, right? So they were sort of the MVPs, I guess, of that world, and they're getting rid of it. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. So it's just going away, I guess is the way to say it. So they want people who wish to be involved in Xbox to join the Insider Program, join Xbox Research, where you can actually interact with Microsoft people and provide feedback directly to the team. There's the rewards programs, FanFest, and they have all this stuff. But the fact that I had never even heard of this, to my knowledge, I never wrote about it.
Because there are Xbox MVPs, right?
Oh, are there too? Oh, good.
But it may be that they're now calling those they're actually ambassadors, and they're closing the whole thing down.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's kind of like, yet another version of, oh my God, it's doomed. Bloomberg did a nice piece on Sarah Bond, who's the president of Xbox, and it had a couple little tidbits in there. And one of them is that they apparently spend about $1 billion a year acquiring games to put in Game Pass, right? And this is where you have to do a little bit of math. And this is why I was looking up Xbox Live Gold, right? They have X number of subscribers. They pay X number of dollars. They have 3 tiers now. 4 tiers, I guess, technically, right? 4 or 3 tiers, whatever they have. They have some number of tiers. 4 tiers. I have many tiers. I have lots of tiers. I do nothing but spend tiers. Anyway, I know.
But do you have tears for fears? That's
I do.
Yeah.
I have a lot of fears too, actually. So Game Pass back in February, they said had crossed the 34 million subscriber line, up from 22 million in January the year before. That's a lot, but a lot of those people are Xbox Game Pass Core, which used to be Xbox Live Gold. And that's why I was looking it up, because if I'm not mistaken, the last time they gave us a number on that, it was 45 or 48 million. So that's not actually great. So I don't know. So we don't know how much they're paying. We know that those prices have gone up. We don't know how many games they acquired with $1 billion, although I guess you could look at how many games come out in a year and kind of do the math on that. So obviously the basic deal is here, they're convincing companies by paying them to put their product into the system, usually catalog games, but they want it to be, newer games too, AAA games even. And they've experimented with that with their own games, but they're trying to turn this into a thing, right? The future of Xbox is going to be these services, right? Not the hardware. And I'm guessing it's not profitable, but I'm sure there's a point where it starts to make sense to them, and that's what they're working toward. I guess we'll see. I don't buy into the fears about this harming game sales, frankly, because first of all, they started it as a way to get catalog games out into the world again, and that's just free money for anyone who does benefit from that as a game developer. But like Netflix used to be this garbage service with all these not even B level, but like C and D level movies that were on there. Like now they spend money and have some awesome content and a lot of crap content, but they spend money on stuff. So a Game Pass has sort of evolved in a similar fashion, and we'll see. The fact that they're not giving away the new Call of Duty to everybody on Game Pass is probably telling.
You knew that was coming. That was the question
Something
number
was
one
coming,
when all this was like, how are you going to justify this $1 billion product?
And I'm sure the first thing they looked at was like, well, just raise the price. And they were like, we have to double the price? Okay, so we got to do something different. It was so they did what they did, right?
Yeah.
They basically took it away from the biggest group, part of that audience, right? Which was the Xbox Game Pass audience. So that's a solution. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's not that interesting, but they, Microsoft and Xbox, as part of Microsoft, has these carbon goals. They talk about being in a certain place by 2030 and yada, yada, yada. They have done a lot of this, and it's been a while, but they've done the power management setting changes in the Xbox, and they say they've over the past 3 years have saved the equivalent CO2e to preventing 3 billion car miles being driven on an average gasoline powered car, yada, yada, yada. Honestly, the best thing they could do for the environment is never make another Xbox, right? So that's working out great. They didn't really talk about that, but I bet that contributed.
There you go. There's a way to been positive on a failing business.
I know, it's awful. I feel bad, but I guess a lot of people, customers, have actually not bought into, but have agreed to do this, right? So the promise of Xbox is that this thing would sit there and run overnight. If you had upgrades or new versions or whatever of games and stuff, it would do that in the background, including system updates. And if it had to, it would reboot. It's kind of a simple system when you think about it. It's not like you have a bunch of stuff running in the background. So. You were talking about Windows Update. We reboot in the night. A lot of times you might not even notice it. It's even easier in a console. There's nothing really going on, right? They have games that can or nearly instantly start, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing is that thing's like sucking power off the wall like a refrigerator. So they came up with this new power management mode where it actually just goes to sleep. And so the downside to that is sometimes you're like, oh, here I go, I'm going to play. Nope, got to install an update. So I guess a lot of people have done it. So. There you go. People care about the environment.
Yeah, I struggle with the greenwashing, right? Like, what is this? What is real here? What isn't? Like,
we bought carbon credits. We are carbon neutral. I don't think that's how it works. And then just real quick as well, Sony announced a kind of a retro collection of 30th anniversary PlayStation hardware. There's going to be a 30th anniversary edition of the PlayStation 5 Pro when that comes out. Mm-hmm. They're only manufacturing 12,300 units of that, by the way. And all this stuff has that kind of light gray PS1 style look to it. So it's the modern controller, obviously the modern console, and then whatever other hardware devices they're doing. But in that kind of cool original place with the original PS logo, the kind of 3D. Actually, it probably still is the same basic logo that they had in the whenever that was. When was that? Mid '90s? Whenever that first. Well, 30 years ago. It would have been. Let's do the math, Paul. It would have probably been '94 when the first one came out. So that's kind of fun if you like that kind of stuff. And Sony actually sells consoles. So it's good business.
Yeah, but even they don't have an idea for a PS6. But apparently Nintendo does. There's rumors of something that isn't a new Switch coming.
Yes, there is. No, there definitely is. Like, and Sony admitted as much. By the conclusion of its current fiscal year, which is the end of March, they will have at least announced this thing. Which
I can't believe they're doing a scarcity play, making 12,000 units of that PS5. That's really something.
It's crazy. I know. I mean, are these things being hand painted? What is this? I mean, you talk about the Snapdragon thing and maybe someone soldering a board.
I'm used to this in whiskey, but in a video game console, it's just crazy. Weird. Yep. And the funny thing is I can name 3 people that are friends of mine that are going to get one because they're those kinds of people.
Yeah, they're going to, do what they have to do.
Absolutely.
And they'll probably overpay by 3x just to make it happen.
And won't care either, right? Like there's also that culture.
I actually think I think they look cool. I like that. They might want to consider this as a color. I think it looks good.
Yeah, it's attractive.
It's neat.
All right, we're going to pause for a moment. Back of the book coming up, a whiskey, some tips and tricks and so forth. But first, a word from our sponsor, Veeam, V-E-E-A-M. You need to know about Veeam. Let me put it this way. In business, without your data, your customers' trust turns to digital dust. That's why Veeam's data protection and ransomware recovery ensures that you can secure and restore your enterprise data wherever and whenever you need it. Veeam, V-E-E-A-M, is trusted, get this is kind of mind-boggling, by over 77% of the Fortune 500. 77% use Veeam to keep their businesses running when digital disruptions like ransomware strike. The other, 23%? Those are the ones you hear about in the news. Veeam's going to have a big event coming up, October 1st. Veeam, the global leader in data resilience. Have I mentioned that? For the 2024 Veeam On Data Resilience Summit. This is a one-day event you can attend virtually that will give you the information you need to make sure your operation continues even when the worst happens. A world without data is one that just grinds to a halt. Data resilient organizations like yours don't let the threat of cyber attacks or disruptions define them. They put the plan, the expertise, the solutions in place to keep their businesses running no matter what. You'll learn the industry's leading playbook to keep your data safe, protected, and available. Keynote-worthy news about Veeam's latest product updates. I'm committed to silence, but October 1st isn't far. It's not long. how to take full control over where data is stored, and the best practices from data resilience experts who are leading the way. You want to go to this, the VeeamON Data Resilience Summit. It's October 1st. It's free. It's online. There's no excuses. Go to veeam.com to register. VEEAM.com. And really, while you're there, find out more about how to keep your operation, your business running when the worst happens. Veeam.com, data resilience. It's the new thing. VeeamON's Data Resilience Summit is coming October 1st. Thank you, Veeam, for supporting our show. And we move on to the back of the book. Let's kick things off with Paul Thurrott's tip of the week. Paul?
So I had for the tip, it's just a bit of common sense, really. And when I wrote this up, I kind of 50-50 people like, oh my God, I'm totally doing this. And the other half were like, I've been doing this for 19 years. What's your problem? But with the New York Times, I pay for a couple of newspaper subscriptions. My wife and I read. I
got WAPO. I figured that was enough.
Yeah, I pay. That's Jeff another more. One, right? Yeah. So in that case, for example, like they'll have a introductory rate. And I think for WAPO, I paid. I gotta get this wrong, but maybe like $40 for a year, which is great. Like nothing.
Yep.
And then next year it was like 60, and I'm like, awesome.
Yeah.
And then the next year it actually went up to 120, and they never alerted me that it was renewing, and I was like, okay, that's how they get you. The New York Times, is getting more expensive all the time, but they've also bought a bunch of other properties. So they bought the Wirecutter. You got to pay extra for that. Mm-hmm. They bought the Athletic. I can't read sports anymore without paying for, you have to pay for something else. They have also things like games, like crosswords and other games. They have cooking and some other things, right? So I was already paying them some stupid amount of money. Of course, they bill you every 4 weeks. So It's not 12 units of payment. It's 13. So I was like, I've had, they put ads in there, and they animate, WAPO does a better job of that, where you can actually turn the animation off if you want, not just in ads, but not in ads.
My Pi hole saves me on all this, right? Like I
use NextDNS for that as well. Yeah. But this whole, it just kind of, piles up. So I talked to my wife the other morning, and I was like, I'm going to get rid of this if you're okay with it. She's like, yeah, I could be fine with the Washington Post. It's fine.
Yep.
And I went to go get rid of it, and they were like, actually, we'll just give you that we'll give you the introductory rate but for the whole year with everything we do. So all access for $1 a week. So it went from $23 every 4 weeks to $4.
Right.
I'm like, all right, okay. I'll stay.
It's hard to say no to that.
So the Washington Post is
120. I just checked 120. Mine, 120.
Well, I canceled that, and they did not ask me back at a lower rate, but I just created a new account with a different email address, and I got $40.
Yeah, so you saved, you're down a third, right?
So between the, 19 times 13 plus 60.
This is a lot of cocktails.
Plus another 60, because I was paying for the Wirecutter. Whatever that adds up to, it's hundreds of dollars. Pretty good. This is something we need to do more of. And, tied to this is this notion of you have all these streaming services you're paying for.
Yeah. We're doing this now at this house.
Here's an idea.
Specifically the sports streams. We shut them all down off season, turn them back on when curling starts.
For the Netflix, Hulu, whatever, maybe pay for one of those every month and just kind of cram everything in and then move to the next one. So we're moving to this system. So this was something maybe.
Well, and it looks like looking at the Discord stream, we're not alone on using email aliases for that too. It's easy to make them.
Yeah,
their systems aren't sophisticated. Just keep switching.
Yeah. So so I have an address now, which is nytimes at whatever. So yes, right. You can do it. Apple does a good job of this. They'll do that automatically. I have a custom domain through Google. They allow you to have any number of aliases on any account you have. So very easy. And then for the app pick, it's actually kind of like 2-3 whatever different things, because it's just kind of randomly this past week has been an interesting time for web browsers. So, and not just, I don't mean the actual products, but just like stuff kind of in that universe, right? So Google announced this past week they're going to sync passkeys through their password manager. Interesting. Right? which is one of the several features
You
that
mean
the
that
built-in
really bad quality password manager we don't encourage nobody to use because it stores passwords in plain text?
But if we're being realistic, most people do use it, and if one of the companies is going to be the one to do it, it's like that's probably the best choice.
You'd think they'd fix the dang thing, like for crying out loud.
I recommend using.
You could end this market. If Google made a good pass manager, like that would be the end of the road for a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the percentage, but I bet it's high 80s, even into 90s% use this. So it's just good to know.
You know why? It's incredibly hard not to use it. It won't frickin' go away.
I have a real just today. I look through the settings because I'm like, seriously, that's
Is
coming
there
up
some
from
way to
Google.
make this go away?
I have turned
Please
everything
stop.
off, and it's still doing auto something. I don't know what it's doing.
Nope.
This came up just on my site. Someone was asking about like organizing data in a browser and like bookmarks and bookmark browse, blah, blah, blah. And I don't do any of that stuff. I'm super simple. The two big things I do is I use a third-party new tab replacement. There are a bunch of these. The one I use is called Bonjour.
You got me smitten with this idea. I haven't done it yet, but I clearly
I love it. And they just upgraded to version 20. They're coming out with a version for the mobile Safari on iPad and iPhone if you have that. It's kind of minimalistic, beautiful photos.
The most important thing of this, actually, I realized looking at it is stop looking at the Microsoft News page when you open the browser like that because you'll click on something
get rid of it.
and it's all garbage, right?
Now,
it's like there's no nutritional content there. Make it go away.
When you say that, someone will say, "But Richard, you can turn that off," and you can. But here's the thing. I use a lot of different computers. I suspect you at least move between a few.
Yep.
You actually, there are many features, just like in Windows, many features in Edge that sync and many that don't. So, you sign in with an account. I just don't use it. Just get rid of it. Don't even
and I realize that I'm not synced. Like there's enough things broken at this point. It's like just give me a third-party product to manage all of that, and so that I don't care what browser I'm in, and it just works.
The third one is ad and tracker blocking. Right, there are various solutions. I don't actually use this one, but it's notable because AdGuard is this one.
Yep.
They are one of the few companies that hasn't kind of like just bitched and moaned about Manifest v3. They raised some concerns about it in the beginning. And the beginning was like several years ago, by the way.
Yeah,
Google's been talking about this for a long time, and they've had to delay it again and again. But now they're doing it. And a couple of years ago, they were like, you know what? We're gonna solve this. It's fine. We're gonna make a Manifest v3 version of this thing that works great. And they just released it today, and it has a bunch of improvements even. So they Google had made some changes in response to feedback. There's some other things they had to kind of work around, but according to them, everything's great. So, I mean, I wouldn't use it. No, but it's but I think it's sometimes necessity triggers innovation or whatever. So they've done their right thing.
Yeah,
and I guess it's good. So anyway, between these things, I mean, this is like for me, it's like the browsers. Get rid of as much of it as you can. Custom new tab. I use something called Pocket for save later. I will often save something to Pocket and then just go read it in Pocket immediately.
Yeah.
It's not for later just because they have that clean, view.
Yeah, the stripped down last blinky blue. Yeah, for sure.
They do a great job with it. So
I do like Pocket.
Oh, I should say one of the things that AdGuard does that I actually don't see elsewhere. So the new Safari does this in Mac OS X Sequoia. You can actually point it at individual elements on a web page and say, nope. So if your ad tracker, whatever, doesn't get rid of something and you just don't want it and you don't want it to be there every time you come back, it could be like a animated video thing or whatever it is. You just get rid of it. So that kind of functionality actually sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah. All right. Well, for the rarest thing in the world, I actually did a run ads about Windows. Can you believe it?
I do. It has to happen sometimes. I mean,
the joke is I fight for them all the time. It's just there's not a lot of people who actually want to talk about server, much less desktop. But I can always count on Oren Thomas. So episode 951 is with Oren, who I think has actually written more books than you, man. Like that.
Hey,
a lot.
Hey.
Yeah. He's one of those quiet, hard-working Australian guys. Like, he just gets stuff done, and he's great to check in with regularly. And I asked him, it's like, talk to me about the new features in Active Directory in the context of Server 25. He's like, okay, well, here we go. And so off we went, right? Like, It's plumbing, but it's important plumbing. Like most.
So does he
organizations
feel
have it.
about Windows Server 2025 the way I feel about WPF, or I did in the beginning because now I've been a little let down. But in other words, like, oh my God, look, they were paying attention to something that people are actually using. Nice.
Yeah.
You know, is there kind of that element to it?
Well, I mean, is anybody paying attention to 25? Like, we're really struggling with people caring, right? Like, but there,
well, I think it's because of what you just said, because it's infrastructure, it's plumbing.
It's totally plumbing.
But you know what? That's why it's important.
Yeah. Well, and one of the points, this is why I wanted to talk about the AD side, because Active Directory is generally perceived as an attack vector. Once you get your phishing strike through, once you're inside the network and you now are able to impersonate a domain user, you can lateral into other machines and pretty quickly unravel Active Directory. And now you'll get admin accounts and so forth. And the biggest issue with this is that your functional levels are too low, right? If you actually upgrade to the higher level functional levels, there's a lot of good security features in AD. We just haven't implemented them. And the requirement is hard to raise. If you want to take advantage of the security features in Active Directory for Server 2025, that means the oldest machine functioning in your Active Directory network has to be Server 2016. Which, admittedly, is still an 8-year-old machine.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's still pretty old.
Look, if you've got an older infrastructure, like there's some hangers-on out there, and they will hold you back on those functional levels. Like it is and by the way, a totally unrewarding process to fix this. At best, your users will perceive nothing. Far more likely
that's welcome to IT.
Yeah, they won't be able to log in.
If your employees love you, they don't even know you exist.
Exactly. The most you can get is a C.
Yep,
it's super easy to get an F.
Yeah,
but you can never get better than a C. And so, and this is exactly one of these jobs, right?
It's
I'm going
miserable.
to go mess with an infrastructure that works perfectly right now because of potential security vulnerability.
It's just so
right?
awful.
And it's just like, get ready for the tickets, boys, because I'm about to upgrade this old Active Directory server.
Right.
And so, and again, we talked through the process of, listen, you should be running those in virtual machines. You make them small footprint, build new ones, and retire old ones. We actually got into FSMO roles, which is really like a way back kind of thing, but they still exist and it's part of the problem. And so it was good to push through that. Another thing we wrapped the show on, which I really appreciated, was Microsoft certification these days. They're getting rid of the exams.
Wait.
They're working. They're removing. What they're doing instead is giving you exercises, and they have machine learning analyzing how you do the exercise, and if you do it correctly, you pass.
So are they partnering with Duolingo or something? What's going on?
I don't know who.
It's like you can learn French, music, math, or Active Directory.
An Active Directory, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing. Is like do the work, and we'll pass you. Jeez. So it doesn't matter how well you memorize questions and answers. Get rid of all of those books. Can you do the work? If you can do the work, then okay, here's a task. Work through this, and if you get to the end point, that's a pass.
Right.
So I'm super excited about that because there's plenty of folks out there who are bad at taking exams but can do the work.
Right.
And so the fact that I could get a certification because I know how to do the work is awesome.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. All right. Last but not least, you ready?
I am.
You saw the name already, so you know it's a weird one.
I feel like we're doing this is like the S week.
Well, there's a couple of reasons why I went with Harazaki. I mean, one of the things is I've been promising to do more Japanese full on. And since we already talked about Nikkei and Yamazaki, which are the big old guys, I felt like I was okay with going into some of the littler ones. And this is one of those. Although, as is typical, the story has taken many turns and twists, some of which I am not happy about now that I've gone down the path. But you find these things out towards the end of the research, right? I mean, in some ways, you're going to learn a little bit about how I build these stories in the first place. So I found a bottle of Harazaki at my local distributor and grabbed it because fun. And then you start doing the research. So I learned about the Yanazawa family. So the Yanazawa family have been making sake since 1856. So, and it's named the Akashi Sake Brewery because it's in Akashi, which is in the Hyogo Prefect, which is the southern part of Japan, just east or just west of Kobe and Osaka, right on the Osaka Bay. And in 1918, they started doing distillation, but of course that would be shoju, right? They weren't worried about whiskey. So And the shoju distillery is called Kyoki, which is the name of the bridge that connects Kyoki and Asahi. Remarkably named the Asahi Kyoki Bridge. So that's Osaka Bay. That's where they are. Family-run business. The fourth generation, which is Kimio Yonezawa, now runs it. And when Yamazaki goes big, and we have and we get lost in translation, and it's Suntory time, all that stuff happens. All of these distillers are like, "Geez, we should sort of get in on this." But Kimio was clever because what he did was say, "I know nothing about whiskey. I'm going to Scotland." And ends up getting tied in with an organization called Marussia, the Marussia Beverage Company, and they own Torbheg, which is the second distillery on the Isle of Skye, the first being Talisker, last week's whiskey. Now, this is where the story, I dug into Marussia at the end of my research. I'd already figured out the whiskey and all these other things, but as I dug into the company, and then I got a little squeamish because it's owned by the Paulson Company, or the Paulson family. So this is a Swedish family that made their fortune in pharmaceuticals, an organization called Ferring Pharmaceuticals. And the dad, the guy who runs the whole show, is now a big billionaire and a philanthropist. They moved to Switzerland. They're in Lausanne. He's famous as an adventurer for being the first person to have visited all 8 poles of inaccessibility in the world. I bet you've never heard of the 8 poles of inaccessibility. It's just the sort of thing a billionaire adventure comes up with. So these are the 8 sort of most inaccessible locations on the different continents. So in North America, it's like a place in South Dakota. In South America, it's in central Brazil. In Africa, it's in the central.
It's not inaccessible. It's just that nobody wants to go there.
They're pretty hard to get to.
They call it Sturgis. Yeah.
And then, of course, the hairy obvious ones are things like Antarctica. There's a location. It's not actually on the geographic pole, but it's the most inaccessible part. The Russians got there first, and he's been there. And in the Arctic, he actually went to the bottom of the Arctic Ocean and in a submersible to get to the location that was the most inaccessible. Although, at the time, I remember this in the news, they put down a Russian flag down there, which for a Canadian is like pretty damn offensive. We are actually the guardians of the Arctic, for crying out loud. Right. And then there's one other spot called Point Nemo, which I know from the space industry. It's the place where you drop off your spacecraft. So that's where Mir crashed into, and it's in the South Pacific, and it's the point in the ocean furthest from any landmass. So that's where the International Space Station is supposed to end up, and so forth. But the Russia tie is a thing because apparently Paulson is good friends with Putin to the point where he's literally an honorary consul to Russia in Switzerland. So he's built a bit of a mini Diageo, or a sort of conglomerate of alcohols, and he owns a bunch of whiskeys. One of them is Watershed Bourbon, which is American. The other one is the Hadozaki, and so on. We're going to talk about it. Also, Clontakilty, you may remember. And Torabaheg.
Personal favorite, but now that I know it's a Putin affiliate, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm a little disturbed by this, right?
I'm not sure I want to drink it anymore.
And Torabaheg, which is the Sky. Mossburn is a Swedish whiskey, and Castile Chemise, which is a blending. They also make a bunch of vodkas, including some Russia vodkas you cannot buy because war. Gin, rum, brandy, cognac, Armagnac, absinthe, liqueurs. They bought a group of different entities. So, there's our digression. Kimio worked closely with Torabheg to actually learn a bit about making whiskey, to the point where they got the license in 2017. They immediately bought a set of stills from Forsyth of Roth, which is one of the best still makers in the world, in Scotland. So they got a 3,500 liter wash still and a 2,200 liter spirit still. Those are small stills by anybody's measure. And now set about making whiskey. And we've talked about this before. Now you're in this challenge of making whiskey late in the game. It's 2017. When are you going to have product to sell? And generally speaking, you need at least 3 years of aging, which is for the most part what they've done. But you're now tied in with Marussia, so you have access to other things. And that's where we get Hadozaki small batch. So this is not just Japanese whiskey. This is what's called a vatted malt. So it's only malt whiskey. No, this is not a blend per se. There's no neutral spirit in this. It's all whiskey. but it has both bourbon and Scottish whiskeys in it, and which means it's probably a little watershed bourbon and a little Torabheg and a bunch of their own 3-year-old. And the barreling makes sense. It's aged in bourbon casks and sherry casks and Mizuara cask, which we talked about before. That's the Japanese oak that's very difficult to make barrels from. 5 to 6 years of aging. Again, that would speak to bourbon because that's a typical aging time for bourbon. But the batches are really small. They only use about 20 barrels total for a given batch, so maybe 6,000 bottles, of which this is one of. See how pale this is. Which speaks to how young it is, and also the fact that they do no coloring or chill filtration, and it's bottled at 46%. So I've gotten into a habit now when I'm home and I get an opportunity to get a bottle of whiskey that I'm going to put on the show, that I get a few days to sort of live with it. So I've been drinking this in the evenings while writing. It's nice and floral up front. There's a nice nose on it, a little bit of alcohol scent, and you can smell the grain, which surprises me. That's almost certainly the Japanese component in it, because you wouldn't notice that so much in a bourbon or much less a Scottish whiskey. Still plenty of heat. It's inoffensive, right? Like it's so drinkable.
That's not what I'm looking for in a whiskey, really. Is it?
What is this? A comfortable drink. It's something I'm sipping on while I'm doing my thing. It's not, I had the Bowmore 15 sitting beside me a while back when I did the Bowmore piece. And each time I went to pick up the Bowmore, it's like, here comes the Bowmore.
Well, that's true, right?
Yeah. Like that. And that, so you got to kind of figure, where am I? Am I about drinking the whiskey, or am I having a drink while I'm doing something else? This is a having a drink while doing something else kind of drink.
All right.
It never interrupts you. So here's the crazy part. Hadozaki, they're only making about 250,000 bottles a year. Any given batch like this, the small batch, which I quite like, is maybe 6,000 bottles, if you can find them. They did not initially sell in Japan. Their initial releases were purely abroad, although they're selling in Japan now. You can find a bottle of this, but it won an award this year, the gold medal in the Asian Spirits Masters Award. I don't know how credible that award is. So the price is all over the map. I picked this up for about $60, and I still see a few places online where it's there, but I've seen it as high as $140. At $60, you can buy one of these and you may not get another, but don't pay much more. It's not that impressive a whiskey. It's a very young, new distillery, fallen in with an interesting organization that I would question, that's doing their best to try and make an interesting product. In 10, 15 years from now, who knows what they'll be making. But at the moment, they're doing what small distilleries do, which is that they're trying to make something interesting. By involving other entities and building vatted whiskeys and those other approaches. This is not the only way that a small distillery could work. We've talked about some other small distilleries where they deliberately use small barrels. Like if you're going to only make 6,000 bottles of something, you don't need 250-liter barrels. Like you could be using 50-liter barrels and increasing the wood coverage and getting more flavor in less amount of time. So they've chosen a particular path, and I understand it. It's one of the ways to get started. And I think it's something we're going to encounter as we go into how these new whiskey makers and the number of the options that are out there, that this is what's going to happen. I'm probably not going to buy another bottle of this, but it's another, it speaks to there's more Japanese whiskeys coming. This is one of them. They've only had a few years, and it's what you're going to get for a young distillery.
This is good though. I mean, I'm glad to know that you don't only review whiskeys that you like. That sometimes it's not that you dislike it, but there's
the bigger sin here is meh, right? It's like
yeah, that's a big sin.
Yeah, like if you listen to emotion, well, and this was my problem was that when it was $60, fine, but because it's now won an award, people are jacking the price up. Yeah. I think on Total Wine, I checked it earlier, it was $125.
Yeah, not for meh.
Don't pay that.
Not for meh.
You know what you can get for $125? Dalmore 12, man. Like you can be drinking perfect golden caramel. Like why? If you're going to spend that kind of money, like really? But for 60 for something
great about
unusual.
You're not a snob, Richard. You'd say it's good or not, whether it's $120 or not. I like that.
yeah, at 100, at 60, it's worth sharing. Hey, try this. It's a new Japanese whiskey.
Right.
At 120, dude, you spent a lot on a weird whiskey. Like, we could be drinking Dalmore.
Are you aging that?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think whiskey is probably a lot like wine, that there's a lot of snob appeal and label.
I like being knowledgeable. I don't like being pretentious.
Yeah.
Because because I want to dig into the knowledgeable crowd, I end up around pretentious people, and I like him, and that does make me enjoy embarrassing them. I am. Paul's seen this. If you wind me up, like I have made sommeliers cry.
Oh,
right? Well, because don't make me weaponize the encyclopedic memory. Like it can be very mean.
I love it.
But I've also gone down the path where I looked at a wine list. This is a sort of famous story within certain circles where we're at a party of like 20 people. So will you pick wine for us? And so I'm going to build a narrative. And I realized there's like, for some reason they bought wine from Bordeaux, but the three wineries are beside each other. That's really interesting. Let's get one of each. That made the chef come down to figure out who the hell I was.
Yeah, why?
Right.
Like he's like, why did you know that? And you got them in order. I thought we should go south to north because of the way the river flows. And he's like,
show off.
He then went to his private collection and we drank wine together.
That's when you get the good stuff.
Well, that's
there
the thing.
You go.
If you care,
If you have
enough,
the palate.
then the other people that care appear. And I want people who care. I don't like the snobbery. I care how this thing was made. Like what did I dig into? How did they figure out how to make whiskey? Like that's interesting to me. The fact that they fell in with a Russian sympathizer is a shame. But, it is what it is.
Right.
Mr. Richard Campbell, runasradio.com is the website. .NET Rocks lives there as well. Sure, he named a podcast beginning with dot.
Yeah.
What about it? What of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And to be clear, it's a dot.
It's a job.
It's great to have you, Richard. Thank you. Are you home for a little bit? Or
This is one more week, and then the October starts and the crazy
October from
begins.
hell.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm not complaining. It's going to be a lot of fun, but
They don't call it Spooky Month for nothing.
yeah.
Mr. Paul Thurrott, I was surprised to find you in Macungie. I thought you'd be back in Mexico.
Yeah, I'll be in Dallas next week and then Mexico for the next,
Lovely.
6 weeks. Or
Lovely. I'm so happy for you. Paul's at thurrott.com. No matter where he is in the globe, you can always find him there, THURRO.com. His books are at leanpub.com, including Windows Everywhere and the Field Guide to Windows 11. We do this show every Wednesday at 11, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific. That's 1800 UTC. You can watch us live. We stream on 7 platforms. If you're a club member, and I hope you would be, I hope you are, paying that $7 a month to get the ad-free versions, you can watch live on a very special Club Twit Discord channel. You can also chat with us in Discord. That's for the club members. Outside world, you can watch on YouTube, Twitch, Kick, X. Yeah, we're back on X. They talked me into it. LinkedIn. And something else, some other places that evade me. But anyway, yeah, watching live is probably just a small percentage of you, but it's kind of the fun, interactive way to watch. Most of you probably just download a copy. You can get it at Windows Weekly, twit.tv/WW. You can also, if you go there, see a link to the YouTube channel that's dedicated to the video from Windows Weekly. Best thing to do, though, subscribe in your favorite podcast player, whether it's audio or video. That way you'll get it automatically as soon as we're done. As soon as Kevin King polishes it up. And today he's got his work cut out for him.
There's going to be some editing and some inlays. Been there. I once redid a .NET Rocks where my track was garbled and the other tracks were intact, and it was a good show. And so I literally took the mix down track and listened to it and said my words over again.
You did Foley work for it.
Yeah, I Foleyed my own show for an hour. It was awful.
awful.
I do not recommend.
I have
terrible.
Done similar
Yeah.
things. Have a great week, Richard. Have a great week, Paul, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you, Elmer.
All of you all you winners and dozers, come back next week for Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.